welcome to the meeting of the Planning, House and Environment Services Committee of the 12th of November. Do we have any apologies?
I'm missing councillors Collins, Dick and Groom.
Councillor Groom's definitely off today. Apologies for him.
There's 16 members present.
We have apologies from Brian and from Ian. Okay, item 3, the minutes of the meeting of the 18th of October 2013. Do we have somebody to move that as a true record? Dennis?
Declarations of interest.
Thank you very much, Dennis. You must have one then.
Yeah, I'm a member of the West Trans board and it is mentioned, but I don't believe it's material, so I will not be leaving the meeting unless something serious comes up.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. Any other declarations? Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. Again, substitute member of West Trans, but in relation to item 12, sir, I'm also a council representative on Wigginshire Community Transport. But again, I would propose to stay and participate in the consideration of business for both items. Thank you.
Jim?
I'm the same as Councillor Geddes regarding Wigginshire Community Transport.
Any other declarations? No? Okay, thanks very much. Item 3, again, minutes of the meeting of the 18th of October. Do we have anybody to move that as a true record? Ronnie, thanks. Anybody to second it? Okay, Dennis, thanks. Okay, item number 4, which is the Planning and Environment Services Budget Monitoring Report. Could I ask Alistair if he's got anything to add to the report in front of us?
Thank you, Chair. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The only thing to add and to point out is that we've removed the strategic housing budget from PHES papers. That's now with Community and Customer Services. So that's noted in the paper, and that's the main change to the figure.
Thanks very much, Alistair. Over to members. Any questions? Craig.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a query really on over the page on page 42 there on the figures there with the economic development. Considering the budget is virtually half of what it was in the last financial year, I was just wondering if there was any sort of adverse effect on the economic development side of things because of the decreased budget, and if we've any noticeable effects in that throughout the plan.
We'll ask Janet just to explain that. I think that's an accountancy matter. It's the figures. Could you explain that, Janet? Thank you.
Thank you. In 2012, we out central no. It's not exactly.
Therefore, the answer to your question is there's no effect on development side.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Just on page 49, 5.3 about Burns statute, see it says consultation will take place in November. Have we got a date for that?
You say that, repeat that again, Jeff. I didn't quite catch that.
Oh, sorry.
You're on item 5, are you, Jeff? Yeah. I'm going to try and go through business quickly, but know that quickly.
I'm in a hurry.
Okay. We've got anybody got any questions on item number 4? Okay. Patsy.
I'm just to follow up on that. You say that 50% of the monies have gone from that part of the budget, economic development budget. I mean, where's it gone?
It's no reported in the centre. It's no reported in the central account or under separate line.
So it doesn't come in our accounts at all?
Craig?
Okay, just again, a comeback. It might have been worth in Chair having a note put in there because these are public papers and the publics will look at these figures and may have the same sort of questions that we've just brought up here. So it might have been worth having a slight note to just to explain that figure so the public could understand that as well.
So if there's big movements, then an explanation for any movement. Good point. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, can we go to the recommendations then? We're asked to note all three, 2.1, happy with that? 2.2 and 2.3. Okay, thanks very much. Your chance, Jeff. We're on to item number 5, the Economic Development and Infrastructure Asset Class Capital Programme Monitoring Report for 2013-14. Alistair, anything to add to the report?
Thank you, Chair. Stephen Herriot's just going to update us regarding policy and resources as it affects this committee report. Thank you.
The report before you, item 5, was written before Policy and Resources met last week, and it's just to give a bit of an update as it kind of influences maybe some of the decisions that you make in considering the recommendations. Policy and Resources, it's noted within our report here that a bid went into the Policy and Resources Committee for additional capital funding, both for the Stranraer West Harbour Quaywall and also for planned structural overlays on the road network. And it's just to let you know that that recommendation that went to Policy and Resources for 600,000 additional allocation was granted, and in effect the committee has additional 600,000. Certainly at Policy and Resources it was discussed that would probably, the discussion, again I haven't seen the minute, but I understand the discussion was that Policy and Resources were talking about that 600,000, their preference being that it would be allocated to the planned structural overlays, given that an earlier report to this committee, committee had agreed that the 350,000 for the Stranraer Harbour Quaywall would be funded out of managing the capital budget with the potential for acceleration.
Thanks, Stephen. I think Stephen highlights the discussion that took place at Policy and Resources Committee, that we're keen that the £600,000 that was allocated would go on resurfacing. We made that clear that the work on Stranraer Harbour Wall would take place. That would be funded by bringing forward the budget from next year, and then when we deal with the capital investment strategy going forward, certainly the administration are committed to dealing with that issue in terms of next year's budget when we do that in January. But we're keen that the £600,000 actually goes on resurfacing of the roads, and we still spend 350,000 on the Stranraer Wall by bringing forward next year's budget. I think what's important in relation to the roads is obviously the council did have a bid in for funding from the Scottish Government through the Bellwyn scheme following the adverse weather conditions last March. Within that bid was around £794,000 for repairs to roads caused by those adverse weather conditions. So we know there's a significant piece of work to be done in terms of surfacing our roads, and I think it's important to direct that funding towards that, but without having an impact obviously on making sure that the repairs are carried out to Stranraer Harbour. Members got any questions? Graham and then Alistair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the clarification you've given there. Page 48, item 5 at the bottom. I had a bit of concern when I read this. At the September PHES meeting, we were informed there was roughly, or I was always under the opinion, there was roughly £378,000 left of the original 2+ million for Stranraer regeneration. We were also made aware there was 126,000 overspend on the West Pier, and we accepted that. But at that meeting, and I did try to listen to the audio tape with great difficulty, I think the quality is pathetic. It's very difficult to make out. Maybe it's my computer skills. However, we were informed, I think it was maybe yourself, and I'm looking at you, that yes, we acknowledge the 126,000 overspend. It was unfortunate, but we are where we are. But that would come out, or a good chunk of that would come out of the design costs for the £1 million+ that were committed to the slipway. Now, I re-listened to the tape, and that's what was said. But here I opened the papers today, or when I got them last week, and all of a sudden the 378,000 available is down to 252, because we've done a simple subtraction, taking the overspend of the West Pier out of the balances that were left. Now, this is not what we were led to believe at the September meeting, but I'll wait and hear what officers say before I come back in.
Thank you. This is the position to date for the report. There are two things that will affect that figure, I hope, in the future. One is the re-engineering of the slipway to reduce the cost. We don't have the proposed outturn figure for that yet, and also an application for external funding that we've made to support the slipway also. What I intend to do is that when we'll come to Wigton Area Committee in December with a more full report on all the capital programme. By that time, we'll know a more definite cost of the slipway and the outcome of the application for external funding. So at the moment, this is the actual figure, but I'm hopeful that we'll come with an enhanced position to the Area Committee in December.
Unfortunately, it probably won't be picked up in the audio tape, so we'll hold you into that. Okay, Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. A couple of minor points, if I may, with your leave. Pages 64 and 65, sir. The first one talks about coastal infrastructure, and it makes mention of Garrison Harbour, and it's claimed, in fact, that the project is purportedly complete. Now, as my colleague here on my left knows, Garrison is one of these villages where you've got several hundred clerks of works, who scrutinise any jobs that the council do. And really, there's been a bit of a kick-up, Chair, at the moment as to whether or not the works have been done in a proper fashion. So I would want to flag that up and perhaps ensure at the end of the day that these concerns and complaints which have been articulated by the community are not really as the situation is. And that's the first one, sir. And the second one, again, we're talking, it's got a tick in it which says project complete. It's the retaining wall at Newton Stewart. There was certain work done there on the back of the extremely serious flooding that was occasioned within approximately a year ago. My question, with your leave, Chair, would be that there's a further report awaited, I'm correct in saying. Any indication, sir, when that will be produced and whether or not it will quantify any additional works which are required? Thank you.
Chair, I think I can answer that. I think we have the draft report from our advisors, and the intention is to check that through, make sure everything's included that we wish is included, and to have a meeting with the Flood Action Group early in the year.
Grateful, Chair.
Ian, I think you're next.
Thanks very much, Chair. 611 is the first question, and that's in regards to there's coastal infrastructure, there's work to be undertaken at Newby, but here that's been put back. How much was involved with that? I missed it within the report. It's probably there somewhere on one of the links. And it's been moved, the money's been moved from a job in Newby over to Stranraer West Pier, I think it is. How much is involved with that? The other thing was Windermere Road, there's a developer's contribution. I think there's about £800,000 applied to that. The developer's contribution will come back in the region, I think it's 640k. Where does that money go when it does come back? It looks as if it's being applied to Arran area, which it is. It's certainly into Arndale and Estill, but where does that money go when it comes back to the developer's contribution? And slippage schemes, we agreed on the 12th of March this year, slippage schemes for roads works. How have they been applied as far as any slippage money? I don't see everything that we agreed within the report, the schedule that's there. So I suppose, how does that apply? I think there's still a load of potential reserve schemes that haven't been addressed as of yet. So I think maybe a couple there for you and one for Stephen.
Okay, I think probably Stephen and maybe Ewan.
Could I just come in on the Newby works? The cost that was originally allocated to that was £7,000, to answer your question. So it wasn't a large sum, but obviously the reports flagged that there were issues with getting access to that site. We wanted to look at that for next year's programme. The slippage in terms of the roads programme, we had at the turn of the calendar year, just before the start of this financial year, we had, as you pointed out, agreed a long list of reserve schemes, and they're there for us to take forward. I don't think we're anticipating that we're going to accelerate too many of those reserve schemes this year, given that we're looking at trying to manage the whole programme. We have the kind of accelerated spend, the 350,000 the Stranraer Quaywall, to try and manage within the whole of the infrastructure asset class programme. Back at the July committee, there was the accelerated spend to do with the winter damage as well. So there are a number of areas where we have accelerated spend that's been through committee and agreed. Not anticipating that we'll go on to many of the reserve schemes, but that we would give them first consideration as we look at developing the programme for next year, that we would bring back to committee for the year ahead.
the developed contributions when they come back in go back to the corporate centre. That's because the Windermere Road funding was additional funding brought forward from Policy and Resources Committee to support the delivery. So it would all go back into corporate centre and then it would be available for reallocation.
Can I just come back on the, I suppose, the question has been answered. As far as the 600k what was agreed, policy and resources, how does that apply to any potential reserve schemes that we have for roads, because we've touched on that?
The 600,000 for policy and resources, the bid that was made there was really to deal with not so much the reserve schemes either on the strategic roads programme or on the road structural maintenance programme, but we're looking at much shorter lengths of planned structural overlay. A lot of areas in the network that we're finding coming out of the winter damage and some of the work that we'd identified that we wanted to do if the Bellwind scheme bid had been successful. We're looking at areas where if it was repairs and isolation, it might be contract patching, but we're looking at larger areas of road where it's larger kind of contract patching that we want to undertake, or mini surfacing schemes. So that 600,000 is really, it's separate from all the kind of bigger schemes that we have identified within the programmes and approved. We've got DG First undertaking a piece of work through this month just to tie down the best spend of that 600,000. They have a number of areas where they feel it's quite critical that we go in some very kind of small overlay surfacing schemes. So the bid was based on policy and resources. The bid was based on these kind of smaller surfacing schemes over and above anything that we had on the reserve scheme lists.
Okay, Patsy, then Craig.
Thank you. I'm just looking at 6.10 structure, where you're not going to do any work on Megget Bridge, which I understand is in Annandale and Eskdale, and that's going to be that project's going to be reallocated to Bridge in Kubri. And I noticed the work that was going to be at Megget Bridge was for painting, and I just wondered what work you're going to be doing, what's not in Kubri, and I just wondered how big a job there is needed in Kubri. I wasn't aware of it.
So as the report points out, the work at Megget Bridge has obviously been identified as time has gone on and inspections have progressed, that it is a much bigger job that needs to be factored into the programme for the bridge strengthening. And it will probably be, I don't know the figures for the Megget Bridge. What was the paint? Do we have figures for the painting contract?
Really worried about the Megget Bridge.
It's a small, yes.
I just don't want to see the Kubri Bridge being painted.
No, it won't. No.
But I just do wonder what the works that are needed are required, how big they are in the bridge.
I think effectively it's a small sum of money, but what we'll do is we'll use it to prepare the designs for works at Kirkcudbright. But my understanding there is it was very much more kind of the concrete repair works at the Kirkcudbright structure with the spalling of concrete, with if there's any exposure or reinforcement bar. That's the kind of nature of works.
Craig.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back to what you mentioned earlier on and has been touched on during discussion. Going back to the grant that the council put in towards for the Bellwind scheme for the works out on West for the bad weather that occurred earlier on in this year. Now, because that grant application failed, that has obviously cost the council that amount of money, 600,000, 750,000, whatever the actual figure came to. Now, I just actually have a question, because it has been reported that the grant failed because of the poor quality of the application from the council. Now, I do have questions on that as to how the officers could not manage to get that application up to such a standard that the council benefited from it. Therefore, we recouped that money that we've had to spend on the resurfacing and the works that we had to do. So I do have concerns on that we cannot fill in an application form to Scottish Government that is sufficiently good enough for them to grant us an award. So that's my first point. And then secondly, just moving on to page 67 with reference the works to the agreed speed restriction works that was agreed at past committees. And in Annandale, and it goes throughout the whole region actually, there are a bunch of different schemes there that all we have for is timescales is for future years programming. I'm constantly being asked, particularly on one of the schemes in Annandale and Eskdale, because the public are obviously aware that this has been passed or identified as a scheme to take forward. And we're constantly being asked as to when this will happen. Now, in the report here, all it says is for future years' programmes. So could we have any sort of more identified timescales on these works, just so we can take it back to the community council's concern? I mean, I do appreciate its financial implications that it's been put back, but if we could have something firmer, it would be appreciated.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Could I just make some comment about the building scheme? I hear your comments on that. As far as officers are concerned, I feel we did a very good job on the application. There were a number of us worked on it and added value where we could. We did include everything that was expended that weekend to cover the claim, and it was the Scottish Government who decided certain things we had put in were not acceptable. We did a very good job. We met the criteria, and I think put your mind at rest. We sit down with that criteria.
I appreciate that, Alistair, but obviously it wasn't a good enough job because we weren't awarded that grant application.
I would refute that. I think we did the best job that we could. We collected all the information. We had an audit trail for all the expenditure. We felt we did a good job. There was no weakness in that. But the decision obviously did not go in our favour.
Chairman, can I just pick up something on the same point? That's okay. Thanks. I just said to come back. I mean, it's because I could understand how Councillor Peacock would misunderstand, but I think there was a threshold. That's the only thing you haven't included of nearly £800,000, and because we didn't touch that threshold, that's the bulk of the reason why the actual application failed. But it was, I think, it's because you included every single mortal thing that was in there. It was well over originally, but it fell back.
Stephen, do you want to deal with the second part of Craig's? Or John, sorry.
Right. Good morning. This committee agreed when we were discussing funding changes to speed limits to prioritise on A-class road network and also have a spread of work across the whole region. And that's what we've been working on this year. Remaining A-class roads are good roads in Sederunt, Dalbeattie and Dumfries. And what the approach we're taking is that we're promoting one order for one community. So for example, at Moffat, we're actually be revoking, I think it's 7 or 8 existing orders, and we're ending up with one order for the whole of Moffat. And that's partly to assist the police with enforcement. They had concerns about the number of different orders in place. With regard to the other remaining locations on the B-class network, if there's communities who are, shall we say, keener to make progress than other ones, I'm happy to hear those and prioritise the work accordingly.
Finlay.
Thank you, Chair. And I see that there's a budget line for road lighting. I wondered where the cost allocation for the rollout of the LEDs, where does that appear in this budget anywhere? I know certainly that there's been a lot of work done in the stewardship. The majority of villages, whatever, now been converted to the LEDs, and I think there's some work started on some of the bigger towns, but there's no indication of what the expenditure will be over the next year in the paper here.
I think, yes, on reflection, it's possibly a bit of an omission from the report. I think the funding has come through Policy and Resources Committee, and it probably has kind of bypassed, in terms of the approval, this particular committee. I think for completeness, we could probably include that in future capital monitoring reports. As you maybe recall, we were looking at the 7 million plus funding over the 8 years, and really that's the kind of the bite-sized chunks that we're looking at, but we could certainly probably pull that back into the monitoring on this report and make sure the kind of complete picture. If I know we're probably responsible to the Policy and Resources Committee for the use of that funding, but for a complete picture against their own street lighting programme, it might be more informative to include that, and we will do that in future reports.
What would be handy, it's a question that's often asked, just when, what's the rollout programme? As I say, we've covered most of the villages in the Stuartry. We constantly get asked when the bigger towns are going to get converted. So any information on the rollout would be useful as well.
We'll capture that for the next report.
I think I've got Jim next.
Thanks, Chair. I was going to make a couple of observations, but I think maybe it's appropriate now to make three. Mayor was about stair waving at you and having the privileges, right, where you're sitting in the chair you're currently sitting in. It's hard to see as a chair or member of staff, people are indicating to speak. I would have thought technology had been such now that we could have managed something. I thought we'd actually agreed sometime in the past to have a system whereby there was an electronic mechanism to indicate when you need to speak next and what order, and it would be useful, I think, if we continue to explore that business just to see, because it but anyway, the points we've got to raise. Page 49, 6.4. What our staff have done has been right, timious and appropriate, but we're now waiting on a licence apparently from SEPA to carry out other works on that particular piece of roadway. And if we don't get it, the roadway will be eroded further and it will finish up being a bigger financial impact on the council. And I would hope we consistently tell SEPA how important it is to get these licences relatively quickly, because that particular location has now been the subject of traffic lights for 4 weeks. And I think that it's just long enough. Fault doesn't lie with us, but we should be pressing SEPA to ensure licences are provided at the earliest opportunity to allow us to complete work to eventually save the council what might be additional financial impact if there's a long delay. The only other thing is the following page 50 and 51, and the report again, it's 6.12 or 6.13 to 6.14. It's quite clear why there's a delay and insufficient schemes being ready, but I would hope that wouldn't be a repeating occurrence, and that simply at some stage we'd have enough programmes in readiness to absorb the budget. And if we do use what was proposed for 6.13 to 6.14, I would hope the schools would feature high on the agenda for the 20-mile-an-hour zones, because it could be a variety of locations. But I think it's important to protect schools. We have a number of them that have got that 20-mile-an-hour zoning to date, and I know there is a scoring process, etc., etc. I would like to see that taken forward if that were appropriate.
Any comments?
In terms of the SEPA application for the B740 Spangle works, I'll make sure comments are passed on to engineering design. They're kind of taking that forward for us and make sure they're pushing SEPA with respect to the kind of temporary restriction there and the potential for further erosion that would increase the cost.
Thanks for that, Stephen. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, I've got Dennis, Jeff, Alistair and George in that order.
Thanks,
By
Chair.
again.
Page 50, 6.7 to 6.10. While I welcome, absolutely delighted at the 3 schemes in the Aslamure area that are now going to go ahead, there's one of them, the route Ainey Home to Bailey Hill, where there's been a constant request for a barrier or a chicane to be set up, because there's a corner there where we had a very serious accident where somebody died, and there's been constant requests to say for chevrons around that corner, so I just wonder if that could be looked at as part of this. And in 6.10, I am concerned, unlike Patsy, about the Maggot Bridge, because this is a well-used U-road. Timber comes down there, and I really would like to know if and when this is going to be repaired, and if it's actually going to become unsafe, if it's a new deck that needs to go on. So that one, I think, as far as I'm concerned, is very important. I understand the reasons the money's been taken put elsewhere because there ain't enough, but I'd really like to know if and when this is going to go ahead. Because also around that area, on those roads, with forestry on it, there is an awful lot of complaints about the state of them. So these are things I would like to ask. If I could pick up, please.
Yeah, I'll get some feedback On the first one, in terms of the extent of the scheme for the Insey home to Billy Hill, we'll get some details to you on the extent of that, and we'll probably we can look at an update on the, possibly not the appropriate for the next report, but we'll look at an update on the Megget Bridge in terms of where that might sit in relation to the mixed-use programme.
You're next, Jeff.
Chair, Burn statue. Given the problem which has been associated with this project in the past, and the design works are now complete, what is the start and completion date for that, and what form will the consultations take? And that we're halfway through now.
The consultation will be 28th, 29th November, open public consultation in Greyfriars Church. I think that's probably been communicated to the members already. It should certainly be being publicised. In terms of, we also will be coming to investigative committee with an update on the design as the previous committee. In terms of start dates, we anticipate the procurement being carried out in November, December, January, with a start date in February. I think that's posted at the previous committee.
Alistair, you're next.
Thanks very much indeed, sir. Just going back to the comments, and Mr. Speedy's rebuttal, for want of a better term, of Councillor Peacock's question. And I wonder, would it be worthwhile, bearing in mind there's a lot of money involved in this, would it be worthwhile perhaps, Vice Chair and yourself, seeking a meeting with the appropriate minister and hammering the point that, we feel we've been hard done by here. I'm not being critical of anyone, Chair, let me make that clear, but I often feel in general terms that this authority portrays, sort of an attitude of being too supine on occasions. And maybe we should, in fact, be seeking a meeting with the appropriate minister and saying, just a minute, we feel that we've been hard done to for the following reasons, and if we can, set out a clear case, I think it would be a worthwhile exercise to do.
Sure, the Minister will be delighted to meet myself and Jim. I mean, there is a sort of detailed explanation from the Minister, certainly, as to why the application wasn't accepted. In fact, there are actually parliamentary questions as well to John Swinney on that very issue. I know the leader actually received a further letter this week from a minister in response to a letter that Ivor had sent asking, basically, you've turned down the application under the Bellwyn scheme. Is there funding available from elsewhere? Because that was obviously a statement the previous administration made that you were pursuing that. The ministerial reply came back and said basically no. Therefore, there maybe is an issue to be taken up over how the wider issue, I suppose, of how we deal with adverse weather conditions and repairs if the Bellwyn scheme, frankly, is inadequate to deal with it based on the criteria. There is obviously a threshold there, quite a substantial threshold that Ian mentioned, but a lot of the council's application, to be fair, was over and above that threshold, but it would appear in the minister's concluded it doesn't meet the criteria. So I have no problem at all requesting a meeting to pursue those issues. Alistair, yeah.
With your leave, sir, can I suggest then that we take a formal decision today that we do exactly that? We'll pursue a meeting, please.
Okay, I've got George next.
Thanks, Chair. It was in that very same point that Craig and Alistair made. I was just curious to know, I mean, D&G, I don't think there'd be any doubt at that time would be probably the worst hit council in the whole country. I was just curious to know, and I'm sure officials could find out, there would be other councils who would apply, I'm sure, under the Bellwyn scheme. I would like to know if they did get anything from that, and if so, what difference was their application compared to ours, which I believe, I mean, we had the roughest weather of the whole country, and if anybody was due to get anything out of it, I would have thought it would have been us. But I would like to know if anybody else actually got anything out of it. Thanks.
Chair, if I could just give some advice on that. The 3 councils in Scotland that had the worst weather were Gyle and Bute, East Ayrshire, South Ayrshire, and Dumfries and Galloway. I don't think South Ayrshire met the threshold, not making application. I think it was similar. I think we were the one council who did make that up. I will double check.
I mean, I think it might be helpful actually, members, certainly the copies of the correspondence I've received, Ronnie's now received as well from the Minister setting out details of the breakdown of what our application actually was, and also the answer to members of exactly what happened. Request up for a meeting to discuss the issue further. Okay, I think we're back to Finlay.
Thank you. It was a point after Councillor Dempster said that wondered if there was a problem with the SEPA licences. I've heard over the last few weeks that there may be some pressure on the council with regards to the strict stance that SEPA take on drainage works and so on through the winter months. Is this something that is a concern to the council, in particular when we've got item 16 with the drainage priority planning and enforcement legislation coming up? Is there any issues with SEPA enforcing their rules far more strictly now than they did in the past? And does that result in slippage of projects and so on?
I think certainly the feedback, particularly engineering design, probably get much more to do with the contact with SEPA and the licensing, particularly in respect to our bridges projects, work in water courses. To a certain extent, it affects our flood risk management team within the infrastructure section as well. But I'm not getting feedback. I'm not aware that it's any more onerous or more difficult to go through the appropriate regulatory processes with SEPA. It certainly was something that changed and was firmed up in a process 8-10 years ago in relation to the controlled activities regulations, magnitude of engineering works and water courses, and sort of approvals that were required in relation to the river conditions, the river morphology. So I'm not aware that it's been a particular problem. We did. I think probably last year's bridges programme there were a number of delays, but I think we've got a bit wiser to the kind of timescales that are required to give SEPA the right information to work in some of these water courses that are sensitive, and that's kind of factored into our bridges programme. I certainly know the likes of the A708 works above Rayner's Tail at the start of the year. Approvals were put in place very quickly because of the urgency of the works that were required. Took SEPA along with us on that negotiations, and very quickly we were able to put rock fill back in and bring the road up. First turned it around. So I'm not aware of particular problems with SEPA in the licensing process. I'm aware that they do obviously have the regulations to work within in this respect. They're very, obviously have a view into the sensitivity of some of the water.
Patsy?
Thank you. I'm looking at Appendix 5, which is the risk register assessment. Can I say I think the appendix that was sent out with our papers is really useful when it's colour coded. It makes it very easy to follow. And it's just, I just like an update on, there's two that are major problems, major risk impact, and one that's catastrophic. So I mean, that's quite a desperate word. And I just wondered if you have an update on that. So I'm looking at number 7 and number 10 in the Economic Development Capital Programmes and number 17 in the Infrastructure Asset Assessment. So it's the Heritage Lottery funding. There's no time scale with these, so it's difficult to know whether you're in the middle of something or whether it's beginning or an update.
Certainly my reading of the report refers to the fact that if we were to fail to get, for example, in the relation to Stranraer Townscape, if we fail to get the HLF funding, then it's obviously would have a major impact. And likewise, if we fail to get the Scottish Government funding for the White Sands regeneration, I think the word used is right, catastrophic if we don't get that funding. But I suppose these are assessments. What if, as much as we don't know at this stage whether we're going to get that, but this is clearly what it would be if we didn't get that funding.
I just think, with the risk thing, that's what it's all about, is it flags up a potential problem, which is really is quite interesting. It's very good to see. But we don't have it. I don't know whether it's catastrophic for the next 6 months or it's going to be sorted within a year, or it doesn't give you that. And it's quite interesting.
Basically, where are we with the applications for funding?
I think in terms of the risk assessment, the risk matrix, it was certainly a comment that we got back September, I believe, Planning and Environment Service Committee, that it would be useful to see that data for some of the major projects and the programmes, and we've added that in. I think the kind of format is really, we've tried to get a model the council format for reporting the risk management process, and it doesn't necessarily, lend itself, or it doesn't necessarily have an element of indicating what the timescales are on the projects. And I think we report that through the progress elements of the reports in other areas in terms of the timescales. Particularly for the White Sands, we do we have a certain amount of approval from this committee to move forward with the project. We are submitted a bid to the Capital Investment Strategy Group, and I understand that's going to the January meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee for continuation of council funding to take the White Sands project forward. We had reported, I think back in September, we brought a discrete report on the White Sands project, and we had talked about the funding situation with Scottish Government, and the feedback that we have is that it is a project that is of interest to them in terms of receiving a funding application bid, but that they couldn't tell us when we discussed it with them what their kind of timescale was for dealing with the funding of the capital flood risk management programme beyond the next financial year, and that's something they are resolving in the next spending review process. So we have identified that there is significant, or we've identified it's catastrophic in terms of an impact using the approved risk management process. It'll be the magnitude of the funding that's at risk if we don't receive it. Whether that's something the council would fund, but it's that magnitude of cost that puts the kind of impact up so high in terms of.
Chair, but I mean, you can't blame me for asking. I mean, you have a risk thing here, and it's got catastrophic next to it. I mean, let's know what that means, and if we're going to be able to resolve it. Because if we're not, then it's not going to be a project we go forward, presumably, or it's going to be something else that happens. So that's really only. I understand why it's there and what you're trying to do, but having put it in front of us, can't be surprised if we get questions.
I think what the risk matrix has shown is that we're aware of that risk and that it is being managed. It might not be resolved satisfactorily in terms of the level of funding that we would like to see from Scottish Government. There are other ways that we can deal with that, or we can make a decision on the viability of the project. But it's flagged up as a risk that we're managing and aware of, and won't be able to close down until we have all the information on it, or reduce the impact of it until we can get in a funding position.
I mean, I think the mitigation is as important as the potential impact. So if we don't get the funding from the Scottish Government for White Sands flood prevention scheme, then we have to look at it as a council, part of our capital investment strategy. Find that. John, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. It's just on something that Jeff had before. Is in terms of Statue Square, I know that we've had delays and design changes in that the programme that was supposed to be taken forward in that, and I say the revised design works are now complete. Are we still confident that this has got to come in on budget or that from the original allocation that we made? Because I would hate to see that with design changes, etc., that we may be exceeding the budget.
No, as far as I'm aware, and everything to date has said that we're still within the budget we set. Committee, the capital spend. There's an element of contingency in that budget, as all projects would have as well. So as far as I'm aware at the moment, but the real answer to that will be once the tendering process has been completed, early January, and we'll be able to report back the outcome of that to members.
Any final questions? People that haven't asked a question are the two Ronnies. Your last chance. No, I don't ask. Sorry, I will never do that again.
Thanks very much for that kind invitation. I promised Claire I wouldn't say much today. It's just on page 66, and being parochial, which is not like me, Lady Street and High Street footways, these were both mentioned at Annan Community Council last night, so I give reassurance that these were being looked at, and it's nice to see that they're confirmed here. Thank you, Chair.
Can we go to the recommendations then? 2.1 is simply to note the financial update. We're happy to do that. 2.2 to note the progress. Yeah. 2.3, likewise. Yeah. 2.4, note the economic development infrastructure asset class programme again, risk assessment and mitigation measures, certainly noted that. 2.5 may require we can certainly note the submission of a bid, but it may be helpful to add in there details of the outcome of the bid, which is effectively that we received £600,000, and that will be focused on road resurfacing work, and obviously that won't impact on RAR work that will also go ahead. Are people happy to include that? Okay. 2.6, the list of projects there, we're happy to agree them. Likewise, 2.7, okay, 2.8, and 2.9. Okay. You may wish to add in 2.10, which is a request for the meeting with the Minister to discuss the issue around repairs after adverse weather, etc. And also to agree that a note will be circulated to members outlining what the application was and the explanation for why that was. We're happy with that. Okay. Ian, sorry, yeah.
Thanks so much, Chair. I mean, I'm just wondering, because I touched on earlier the 640k that'll come back, and it was pointed out it'll come back to the centre, and where that goes through their policy and resources, I'll decide. I'm just wondering, because of the implications that has on Annan and Annandale and Eskdale, in fact, could we actually recommend to policy and resources that that money is retained within the Annandale and Eskdale area? I mean, I think it's money's went out, unlike, I mean, the difference is the rest of the projects in here, money goes out and it stays out. This money's went out, 800k, 640 comes back in. It's only 640 in particular I'm talking about that comes back in. I think it'd be appropriate we could either, I know we can't ring fence it, but we could certainly recommend to policy and resources that's retained within the Annandale and Eskdale area.
Certainly would matter for policy and resources to determine what priority projects it comes forward. It's not unprecedented for money to be retained, but you need to have very specific projects that come forward to policy and resources in order to make a decision on that, I'd imagine. And that would certainly happen. Okay. Number 6. Which is the capital programme. In this case, it's around the fleet asset class. Can I ask Alice if there's anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add at this stage, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, members? I can't see the guy in the top right-hand corner very well. Jim?
It's a light in your eyes, yeah. Or the dazzle, depending how you put it, I suppose. It's just a daft laddie question. On the Appendix 2, I see there are 14 vehicles, and it says halfway along MOT expiry. Now, according to this, they're all expired. Should that be the MOT renewal date, or are we sitting with 14 vehicles that are currently MOT expired waiting on a replacement?
Harry, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, your first option was the correct one. It would be the MOT renewal date. So these will have been re-MOT'd.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Harry. And I suppose idle curiosity has me ask what the contract renewal date is. And I see 27 to 8 for the Berlingo van, make it quite an old vehicle. Can replace it, but I presume that's the type.
Those were the dates when the original maintenance contract for the vehicles expired. Since the expiry of the contracts, they've been repaired on a time-line basis.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? You can move to the recommendations. Happy to note 2.1. Happy to note 2.2. Again, it may be helpful just to add in the outcome of the Policy and Resources Committee submission, which was to grant the £350,000 for the fleet asset class, and happy to note 2.3. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, then can we turn to item number 7, which is appointments to outside bodies. I think it's probably helpful if we go through these one at a time. It's probably the simplest way. So I think probably just take the recommendations 2.1 down to 2.12. So we'll start with the first one, appointment of one member to the Community Safety Partnership as detailed at 4.1.3. Do we have any volunteers, nominations? Jeff, is that a volunteer or a nomination?
It's a nomination. Jim Dempster.
That, Chair.
Okay, seconded by John. Jim, happy to take that?
Happy to serve in that chair, yes.
Anybody else? Okay, Jim, you're duly appointed. 2.2, appointment of 2 members to the Conference of Peripheral Maritime Regions as detailed at paragraph 4.2.2. Looking for 2 members. Alistair?
Can I move, sir, Jim Dempster and Brian Collins?
Can I decline and suggest Jim McClung instead, Chair? It might be more appropriate, but I'm very grateful to you for your nomination.
Got it wrong again, Dad.
The coastal village of Kirkconnell will be devastated.
There's a nice beach at the foot of my street.
Okay, we've got Brian Collins and Jim McClung nominated. Is there any other members interested? Okay, so Brian and Jim McClung duly appointed. We're looking for now 3 members of the Corridor Regeneration Steering Group as detailed at 4.3.2. Now, a note from the report that we need, or it's recommended that members come from the 3 wards, so that'll be Annandale South, Annandale East and Eskdale, and Annandale North. Is that correct? So we should just go through them 1 ward at a time. Certainly give us a challenge when it comes to Annandale North. Come here. First of all, Annandale South. Any volunteers?
Craig Peacock.
Craig Peacock's not from Annandale South, but yeah, we can come back to that in a second. Annandale South.
Chair, can I just take advice on that, because we have 4 members. Do they have to be members of this committee for starters? I think they do. I think that's part of the actual criteria. I think there's only Ronnie and myself from Annandale South on that.
In fact, it's come to this. Come from this committee.
Yeah, so I think it only leaves myself as being the potential person, because Ronnie already is a member through, Councillor Ogilvie that is already a member through being the chair of the stakeholders group. So I think by default, it'll probably be myself.
Self, Ian, okay, from Annandale South. Ian, okay. Annandale East and Eskdale. This is your chance, Dennis.
Councillor Peacock.
Okay. Craig, happy to do that, yeah? Okay. Well, this becomes the challenge because Annandale North, there are no members from Annandale North on this committee. That obviously not possible to do that. So I presume the deed will fall back to somebody else from Annandale North.
I mean, it's not important that the person comes from this committee. It's far more important that they actually take part in the process and lead on this particular project. Now, I would propose Stephen Thompson as an appropriate person to be a member of that.
It's just for clarity again, Chair. I mean, I've not got an issue with Stephen doing that whatsoever, but he's not a member of the committee. So long as we can do that, he's not a member of the actual committee.
I think we'll take some sort of check on governance. That's possible, because obviously we can't appoint somebody from Annandale North, and there's nobody from Annandale North on the committee.
Yeah. Despite my earlier advice, we don't have any members from Annandale North, so by default, we have to do it. There's a reason for that.
Always a way out in governance. Okay. Okay, so that's 3 members appointed to the Corridor Regeneration Steering Group. Okay, we're looking for 2 members to the Industrial Communities Alliance. It actually does detail in the report, I think, appointees to the Industrial Communities Alliance should not necessarily be restricted to membership of PH and E, so it does specify that in the report. Have any volunteers? Dennis, okay. Okay, Alistair?
Hope I've got it right this time, Chair. Councillor Simon Dempster.
We've got 3 members. Want to do it?
Just again, clarity, Chair, thanks for letting me in, is in regards to where would this, I'm just industrial communities, I always thought that was more in regard to the north of the region, close connections to the Ayrshire, but Ayrshire boundaries, I just wondering if that is the case or not.
can only go what's in the report. Certainly historically it has been. The report sort of specifies the industries that are covered by it. To be shipbuilding in Kingham Quay, but that was a bit long ago for me to do that role, I think. Certainly coalfield textiles are certainly relevant. Jim?
You're absolutely right, Chair. It was the Coalfields Communities campaign that morphed into the Alliance, now Industrial Communities, irrespective of what that industrial community might be. I know that Councillor Syme's very enthusiastic. He's been a member of this particular group for a long time, and he sees it being a appropriate function he serves on behalf of the council. So Councillor Syme would like to be part of the Industrial Alliance group, and so would I, if that makes any difference at all.
That doesn't make any difference at all. Dennis?
Yeah, Chair, the reason I allowed my name to go forward is the devastation we have suffered in the textile industry east of the and that is part of it. Plus, there's also now the issue probably coal mines starting in that area, so I think it will become as relevant as it is for the
I don't know if there's any scope for members, 2 from 3 attending meetings, or
Yeah, we can investigate that.
ensure that there are 2 from the 3 nominations attending the meetings, or I don't know how that actually works itself. So, background in that, Jim?
Can you just clarify what it is, information you're seeking, Chair?
Effectively, is it feasible to say that 2 of the 3 members would attend each meeting? Between the 3 of you, determine who's going to go to each meeting. Is that practical?
I would presume the answer would be yes, because the Alliance would feel it appropriate to see representation from the Dumfries and Galloway Council. They'd be very keen to see that in the past. How you would manage who had the primary shout, if for want of a better word, would be a different thing. And I don't think a rotation would be particularly useful, because there is a familiarity and optimism and understanding of process, and it's best if the same people attend on a regular basis. But on principle, I don't think the Alliance would object if there were a substitute in the event of one or both of the primary members not attending.
Would I be right in saying primarily is it the coalfields areas that are covered by the, Dennis obviously covers the area with that sort of textile, current textile, is it primarily coalfields? I'm just trying to think, is your agenda likely to be coalfields around textiles at one time?
Currently it's been coalfields, but I would have to say that there has been an attempt to diversify the basis, being that coalfields are now very much, Dennis is saying, they're very much a thing of the past, but the Alliance is populated by former miners, MUN Secretary, it's Fife, Clackmannanshire, East Ayrshire. It is existing coalfield communities that by and large are currently representative of the group and do represent the group, but there is an intention, especially in the south, to embrace other industrial communities, because there's recognition that they now need representation as well. And it's also to do with the European structure funds, etc., whereby they are being diluted and far more difficult to get access to them. And it's not just coalfield communities that can gain access to these funds. But in answer to your question, it's mainly coalfield communities in Scotland that are currently represented on the Industrial Community Alliance in Scotland.
Okay, so, I mean, there's 2 choices, either go to a vote or we try to deal with it through effectively 2 out of the 3 members. Seems to me that largely coalfield issues, then probably Jim and John, but with textiles front and center. Is that the deal with it?
Chair, is it all right if I just, I think it was Dennis picked up there, the coalfields, a humongous coalfield underneath Andy Arnestdale. You know, it goes right into Northumberland, Cumbria, and that's looking potentially to be tapped into. So there is a real issue there. I wondered if they could ask, I think the fact that Dennis sits on this committee, we should really get proud over joining this occasion, but could we have two members and 2 substitutes potentially from both sides of the region? That covers the 2 main coalfields, because it is historically Rowanburn, Langham area has got a lot of open cast, but there's a lot of potential for, well, from open cast to gas extraction to deep mining as well. It's a deep mining where the real comes in. I think we do need membership at our end of the region for that.
Okay, well, what I'm going to suggest then is that we ask governance to approach the Industrial Communities Alliance to determine, first of all, whether they'd accept 3 members, and if that's not acceptable, we come back for some sort of rotational scheme to allow the 3 members to be on it. Okay. Jim's got his hand up.
Just, I have no difficulty with that at all, Chair, and if that solves the problem, that's fine. You just might want to be aware that initially there was only 1 delegate from Dumfries and Galloway Council, that was Bert Saunders. I automatically fell into his boots, for want of a better word, because at the time it was the Coalfield Communities campaign, and this council approached the Coalfield Communities campaign at the sort of end of where it was about to change to the alliance, and asked if we would accept 2, or if they would accept 2. So they've already conceded twice the spaces that were there initially for the Galloway Council. But if you want to go for 3, I have absolutely no difficulty with that. That's just the background here, that initially there was only 1. And it's also worth noting that Kirkconnell qualifies still for the Coalfield Regeneration Trust. Coalfield Regeneration Trust is administered through the Alliance now, or in conjunction and in glove with the Alliance. And Kirkconnell and Kellerholme are the only places that qualify. So that's why John's so keen. He sees it as an opportunity to maintain a presence on that group to ensure that the top end of the region isn't forgotten and there's an opportunity for investment. Currently, it's the only place in the whole of Dumfries and Galloway that qualifies for that particular fund.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, so the first call will be to ask if we have 3 members in the fallback position. Okay, the next one is the appointment of 2 members to the Lockerbie Station Liaison Group. Do we have any volunteers or nominations? Contrast to the last one. Okay, Ian.
I think Peter Diggle was on that. I think he'd be happy doing that. We haven't liaised with him. Certainly nominate him if we're struggling for members.
Who was that, sorry?
Sorry, Peter Diggle is not on this committee, is he? Sorry, apologies.
I mean,
unless we use the same, it depends on the uptake, unless we use the same approach there.
I mean, I'm conscious that we don't have a single member from Andale North on this committee, so I wonder whether or not question that goes to the area committee might be the best way forward. Deals with Annandale North. Okay. So Peter can obviously put his name forward at that point. Okay, happy with that? Okay. The next one is 1 member of Prestwick Airport Consultative Committee. Any volunteers, nominations?
Nominate Jim McClung for this.
Jim, okay. Anybody else? Alistair?
Simply second that, sir.
Jim, are you? I think you're serving it at the moment, do you?
Yeah, I'm quite happy to continue.
Okay, happy with that? Yeah. Okay, so that's Jim McClung appointed. Appointment of 1 member to the Outdoor Access Forum as detailed in 4.7.2. Do we have any volunteers, nominations? Ronnie?
I would like to put Jim Dempster forward for that.
Is there anybody happy with that, Jim, or yeah?
Happy with that, Chair, yeah.
Do we have anybody else? Okay, so Jim Dempster. Okay, 2.8, appointment of 1 member to the Solway Firth Partnership as detailed at 4.8.2. Ian?
Could I nominate Councillor Tuckfield? She's been on that for the last 18 months and she's happy to continue with that.
So that's Roberta for Solway Firth Partnership. Have anybody seconded that, or Alistair?
Well, I was going to suggest Councillor McClung, sir, if he's prepared to accept the nomination.
Do we have a seconder for Roberta?
I'm happy to second Jim McClung, Chair.
John?
I nominate Alistair Geddes. No,
If Alistair wants it, no? No? Okay. Do we have a seconder for Roberta? check if Jim's happy to accept that. Okay, Jim for the Solway First Partnership. 2.9 is the appointment of 5 members to Solway Heritage as detailed at paragraph 4.9.2. 5 members. Do we have any volunteers, nominations? Jim and then Ronnie.
It's that dazzling light again, Chair. No, it's just about Solway Heritage. We sort of wrongly imagined that Solway Heritage had now wound down to a grand degree that the work that they did. And as far as I understand, their main function now is a landfill tax disbursement of that. And the income from landfill tax now is minuscule in relation to what it used to be. So whether or not we need 5 members, whether we know we need an understanding of what the function is and what the requirement of members might be on Solway Heritage might be a better way forward before we decide on membership and how many members there may be serving on it.
I would actually agree with that, sir. I think it would be politic, you know, in the face of it, you know, here today, Chair, it seems something like akin to overkill.
Okay, Finlay.
I'm currently a director of the Solway Heritage, and I think the numbers are 5 because I think there's 4 members of the public and a chairman. I think it will give, the reason there's 5 is to give the council majority in the committee. There's certainly some funds still there to be distributed, but that's obviously diminishing. Alistair does his job properly with nothing going into the landfill tax at all. It'll be redundant, but there's certainly, I was the only person, 5 people nominated last year that attended any meeting.
Ronnie.
I know that David McKee was interested in this. I don't know if it's possible to nominate him as well.
Still interested in continuing, Finlay?
Unfortunately, no.
Should we defer it then and actually get a report back on the current role of Solway Heritage?
It's okay if you've got to defend me. I would have put my name forward, but if you've got to defend and bring it back, happy to pick up with that.
Let's get a report back on that. Okay, 2.10, appointment of 1 member to the Southern Uplands Partnership, as detailed at 4.10.2. Have any volunteer nominations? Is that a nomination, Graham, pointing the pen at Alistair? Alistair's nomination, okay. Alistair nominated. 2.11, appointment of 1 member as a director of the Seven Stains, I think you say, Mountain Bike Community Interest Company, as detailed at 4.11.2. Patsy?
Could I nominate Patsy?
Seconded by Alistair. Happy to take that. Great. Finlay's appointed. And finally, appointment of 1 member to the Biosphere Partnership Board, as detailed at 4.12.2. Happy to accept that? Okay, Alistair, appointed. Okay, too painful. Okay, thanks very much. Item number 8, the Director's 6-monthly assessment of the business plan performance. Ask Alistair if there's anything he wishes to add to the report.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have something to add. I've just been given a message about 2 figures that appear on page 94. And that is under PES 01C, Deliver an Effective and Efficient Planning Service. I've been advised that the figures that are entered under the average time weeks to deal with major development planning applications and the average time weeks to deal with local planning applications need to be corrected. So my apologies for that. I don't know if Steve can add anything to that. Can you, Steve? Or will we write to members, give them the update? And the correct figures are. So rather than 9.884, it should read 64.3. And rather than 0.04, it should read 13.5. So apologies for that. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions on the report from any member? Craig?
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask on that question originally, but since the figures have been changed, it actually turns it around. With the average time in weeks to deal with the local planning issues, we're obviously above target now from the target figure there. So can we have just a quick explanation on that, please?
Chair, yes, you may recall we adjusted the target for this year, so we set a slightly more challenging target this year. The performance of 13.5 is roughly equivalent to where we were with this one last year. We're continuing to keep our eye on performance. It's particularly important to keep our eye on performance with the local planning applications, because they account for something like 98% of the applications deal with. So this is the critical one. Certainly, members at the meeting next week will be receiving a report from us on the outcome of our service review, and this is one area our performance on planning applications looked into in a lot more detail. Got some ideas about how we can change things around a bit to address this.
Happy with that, Craig? Yeah. Okay. Finlay?
Chair, page 93 of the report. Number of new start-up businesses under the Young Entrepreneurs Programme were 4 times the annual target, the 6-month target. Is this just, has the target been set incorrectly, or has there been some big drive on to get new start-ups under this? It's obviously very encouraging we're getting young people starting businesses, but the target and the values are obviously wildly different.
It's purely and simply that the success of the programme's taken off a lot greater than we thought. And this was a 2-year programme funded through policy development funding, and we based the initial targets on roughly on our own startup figures for Gateway, but also the level of intensive time it takes to work with young people, and through the Institute Business Trust, their estimation of what would be achievable. This is purely and simply, this is really flown as a project. We've got a good officer in place delivering good targets.
Pleasure of meeting with the team that were behind this at the DG Chamber of Commerce event, and a lot of really good work going on there. And it was good to meet some of the young people as well recently that had benefited from the scheme. So it's a really positive scheme. Craig?
Thank you, Chair. On page 94, with reference to the developer contributions and the supplementary planning guidance. Now, I understand that that is working in conjunction with the LDP, and the supplementary guidance will come out in time for that. But I'm just wondering if this has any sort of effect on the imminent and current planning applications that are coming through at the moment, and how this affects as well the wind farm benefit, because as I understand, the subcommittee for that haven't made a decision on how we're going to take that forward at this time. And I feel it's really quite important that we, with the amount of applications coming in, especially with the wind farm applications, that we really maximise this developer contributions. So I would just like some sort of update on that, Steve, as to how it all links in, and especially with the wind farm.
The wind farm community benefits is dealt with as a completely separate issue from our planning policy on developer contributions. That's to ensure the separation between the community benefits planning process. That community benefit policy is still being taken forward
subcommittee. The supplementary planning guidance on developer contributions has been out to consultation as a draft. We will be bringing a report back to this committee on the outcome of that process, together with any recommended changes and adjustments to the draft in light of those comments. At that point, and only at that point, can the new supplementary guidance be adopted planning policy. So for the time being, planning applications are still needing to be assessed against developer policies, existing structure plan and local plan.
You want to come back in?
Yes, please, Chair. Just if it's out under consultation at the moment, I mean, who's that going to? Is it preliminary, the developers themselves that are being consulted on this policy, or who are we actually asking about it to get their take on it?
It's been, well, it was put up to wide public consultation. It was advertised at the same time as the development plan, done as part of the certainly all of the local developers and agents were interested in the LDP would have voted on the supplementary.
Alistair?
Thanks very much, Chair. I noticed in some of these codings there seems to be, well, to my mind, sir, possible doubts as to whether or not, we will be able to complete some of the proposals in time. I mean, there's one there, Chair, page 96. We're talking about forestry and woodland strategy. 1st of April 2012. At the moment, 18 months in, if my computation is correct, we're only 50% there. We're expecting, in fact, to carry out the remaining 50% between now and the 6 months to 31st of March. I mean, my question there would be, is that achievable? And conversely, Chair, we've got one there at the bottom of page 94, which is the Galloway and South Ayrshire Biosphere, where we've only started on the 1st of July, 33% concluded at the moment. We're progressing to the extent of a third, but we're giving ourselves a timescale to the 31st of December 2016. And my question there, sir, would be, is that not inordinately long to complete the remaining 66%? I would have to say in the back of that, sir, that there's a palpable degree of frustration in the western part of the region about what is perceived, to be the lack of meaningful progress in developing, for instance, the likes of the Dark Skies Park and the Biosphere proposals. We've got two tremendous designations, some of us would argue, Chair, and we seem to be having difficulty in working these forward and deriving the maximum amount of benefit, from them for the council and the people of that part of the region. So I'd be grateful for a response, sir. Thank you.
I can respond to the first point, which is the forestry woodland strategy. There was a draft, consultative draft came to the July committee. Public consultation has been completed on that, and a report has been prepared on the outcome of the consultation, and it's intention to bring that back to committee. It's either going to be January, if possible. If not, it'll be March, so it should be possible to conclude that strategy in the near future.
Ian? Sorry, Alistair, do you want to come back?
The other one, please, if I may, sir.
Yes, in terms of taking the date first, that date's been set because that is the end of the 3-year funding agreement that we've come to in partnership with East Ayrshire Council, South Ayrshire Council, Forest Commission, SNH. So what we have now, what we've achieved now is a sum of funding in place to put a dedicated team in place for the biosphere. There should be 3 officers working on the biosphere and Dark Skies as their sole job, their sole purpose, and that's managed via the partnership grouping that we have with the Forest Commission. So that's the reason for the timescales. We've done well to bring that piece of work forward. In terms of the biosphere itself, we now have the partnership board that was referenced in the outside bodies report now has charitable status, is formally set up, and we have a signage strategy and draft graphics of signs in place and ready to be discussed. So that's why it says 33%, and certainly I think I'd be coming to the committee in December with a much more detailed update just on where we're at and specific elements relating to the Lincolnshire area. But certainly we have moved this forward significantly in the last quarter, further to discussions with members and concerns that were raised.
Grateful for the response, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Ian, then Ronnie, then John Martin, then Pat.
Thank you, thanks, Chair. Just in regards to a couple of things. See, page 94, it's local development plan. It's gone back to Steve again, but it's people are quite often being asked where is the local development plan as far as where it's been progressed, and I'm telling them it's 95% there, and it's indicated here as being 71%. So just to, I thought we've been right through the council. We've agreed it. We've put it up to now. It should be, if it's no in Scottish Government's hand, it should be pretty much very close to being that point. Where are we with that? If we're only 71% there, is that a true reflection where we really are with that? And the only other thing I'd like to pick up on, the percentage of customer satisfaction rating for development management. It's our target's 85% there, but they're not measured in half years. Do we have an indication? Because where we actually have we got any inclination at all where we are with that, with satisfaction? In regards to, that's the thing that comes up to me with constituents when they do come forward. It's not so much about the timelines. Timelines is important. I know Scottish Government's 8 weeks, and we've got 11.8 there. I think that's as being weeks, and that's a fair enough target. We agreed that. But it's more about the customer satisfaction and that they've been considered in the right way. Timelines is an important thing that I'm certainly getting put to me.
Well, certainly local development plan 71% complete refers to the remaining timescale in front of us before we're able to adopt the plan. There is an item later on this agenda, in fact, which provides an update of exactly where we are, and Andrew will probably be able to give you a little bit more information as part of that item on the development plan scheme, which deals with the updated timetable for the remaining part of the process. Bearing in mind this was the situation at the end of September, so we have had some progress since then in terms of submitting the documentation to Scottish ministers to formally commence the planning process. So Andrew will give you an update on that under that later item. With the other point you were raising about customer satisfaction, that's certainly an important component of the increase in customer focus that we're introducing into development management. There will be carry out an annual customer satisfaction survey, and the outcomes of that will be reported under this indicator for the year-end report. And you say that target is 85%. So that's a stretching target that we're keen to try to meet. We have to make sure, in terms of dealing with customer satisfaction with development management, that we're focusing on the process, quality of service, and not on the outcomes, which can sometimes colour people's opinions about it.
John Martin.
Thanks, Chair. It's just on page 98, the River Myth Harbour Empowerment Order. I noticed there the start date's the 1st of April. I'd just like to know what actually started then, because I know myself and the Chair sat in that committee, sat in the committee that was in for the Harbour Empowerment Order about 4 or 5 years ago. It just seems to be going on. As I say, I know we've had one go at setting up to try and get the members for the board to run this empowerment order, and that seemed to fall flat in its head. A fortnight ago, we had another attempt in consultation, etc., road shows to let members of the public see what was involved in it. We're just wondering how we're actually getting on with this empowerment order. It just seems to be have dragged on for a good 4 or 5 years now, and without any end to it. Right.
Yeah, I think the start date there is effectively the start date that is shown within the current version of the business plan. There was work done in it in the past. With the inclusion of this business plan, there was more of a focus back on the project again in terms of moving it forward. As you pointed out, there was an attempt to identify enough people to actually sit on the Harbour Authority, and that process failed to 2 applications when we went through that process at the start of the summer. the steering group decided to re-advertise and to try and almost press gang a number of individuals that had expressed interest in the past and hadn't submitted an application. And we've re-entered that process with the approval of the steering group to run through the rest of this month through November. We have a closing date to see if we can actually generate the 6 applications minimum that would be required to consider for the formation of the Harbour Authority. So that's where we're at in the process at the present time. If that's successful, we'll continue to move forward. As we have kind of advised the Daily Committee in the past that we would do so. If we're unsuccessful, then the steering group will need to take a view on whether the project progresses in some way or whether it just terminates that.
Okay, Patsy.
Thank you. There's just one on page 9.8, curbside cycling, which due to have started last November and progress to date 0. And also on page 102, last 3 there are all due to start this year in April, and there's no progress on them either. And I just wondered why.
Okay, on the delivery of the curbside recycling, the progress I would suggest is probably an error there in terms of how we're measuring that project. There has been a lot of work done, certainly was started back, and the November 12 date, I would imagine, is probably when we actually got approval from this committee to move forward. We had a special committee with 4 reports on the waste management, waste collection system, and that's the start date that's been identified there. The 0%, I think, has maybe been a bit of an overview in terms of there's no curbside recycling going on, but the project is significantly advanced in terms of the containers being procured, the planning of the routes for the Wigton area initially for the rollout, and the capital spend on the fleet.
Well, that's kind of what I knew, what I wanted to hear. So I'm just quite surprised it's got 0 in there.
Page 102, the second, third, and fourth one, likewise, got 0.
Okay, Chair, I'll take responsibility and we'll get these updated.
Sorry, are they inaccurate? There has been progress on these.
There has
They're
obviously
not
been
just sitting at
there's obviously been
somebody's
progress
desk.
because we're stating that the status is green, and we have not recorded or the figure has not been updated. My apologies.
Get updates for members on them. Any other, Ronnie Ogilvie?
Thanks, Chair. Could I turn to Appendix 3, which is pages 105 and 106? Several questions. The first question would be the festivals event. It's still been removed from this committee and it's still with CCS. I just wondered where that would be reported. So that was my first question. Going down near the bottom, we've got community transport provision and rural transport have both been put back to 2014-15, which seems to be at odds with the recommendations in item 12. And the last one is on over the page where most things have been transferred to the strategic housing commissioning. Would that be reported to the housing sub? That's my 3 questions.
Well, if I start with the last one, Chair, that will be reported to the housing subcommittee. The events one strategy will be reported to Community and Customer Services, either through the Policy and Resources Committee or a new committee if it's set up.
In terms of the community transport provision and the rural transport solutions, these haven't progressed to the extent originally anticipated, and timescale indicated in item 12 refers to getting the projects ready for delivery, but essentially full delivery of community transport delivery framework and the full delivery of rural transport solutions programme will be in.
It's referring to two different things. Item 12 is different from what this process is.
In terms of the rural transport solutions, no, the rural transport solutions programme itself is dealt with in item 12. The community transport provision wouldn't necessarily be through rural transport solutions, but obviously the two are fairly heavily tied together in terms of a delivery framework for community transport in the future.
I hate to labour the point, but in item 12, which we're going to come to, it does say rural transport solutions. And I've equated that to what was in Appendix 3, and to me there's a difference of opinion in both things.
No, the rural transport solutions in Appendix 3 is the same as is referred to in item 12, but community transport isn't necessarily rural transport solutions. There could be a community transport group exists out with the framework of rural transport solutions, but rural transport solutions depends heavily on the involvement of community transport providers.
I mean, certainly the timeline might be something we'll come back to in the item number 12, the timeline. Okay, Jim?
It's just a throwaway line, Chair, and it's on page 106, the very last section about gypsy traveller facilities. And I see there's discussions ongoing to clarify which departments are to manage this progress, whereas every other item has a specific department. I would presume we do intend to deal with it.
Repeat that again, Jim, sorry.
Just every other item on that Appendix 3, has a specific location for the function to go to. But on page 106, the very last section, where it talks about gypsy travel facilities and current provision and location of sites, the information is we're trying to find which departments rather than a department deals with this, and I would hope it doesn't get lost. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we'll take specific note of that point and advise.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, folks, can we turn to the recommendations then? First recommendation, we've also reviewed the summary of performance, 2.1. 2.2, we've certainly scrutinised the exception reports in Appendix 2, obviously based on the additional information we've got in relation to the two planning items. I think it's appropriate, obviously, for the Director to circulate exception reports for those two items, now that we've got the accurate figures. Members can actually accept reports. And 2.3, are we happy to agree the proposed amendments? Obviously, we'll get them back Jim's latter point. Okay. Okay, folks, item number 9 sends a shiver down your spine when you see another report on development plan scheme, but a lot smaller than the last one we had, I think it's safe to say. Ask Alistair if there's anything to add to the report.
Nothing to add at this stage, Chair. Thank you.
Come on, Andrew.
The only thing I could update you is that on the 4th of November, the reporters unit have actually allocated a reporter to deal with the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan. The council has to follow the procedures that the reporters unit set out, so we're required to send an advert out to local press, which we'll be doing next week. We're required to send a letter to representatives, which we'll be doing, and our website will be updated. After that, all the communication will be between the reporter and representatives if there are any queries, etc. Likewise with the council. So that's really the main update.
Thanks very much for that, Andrew. That's helpful. Do we have any questions either on the update on the development plan or the scheme that's set out in the appendix? Ian?
Thanks so much, Chair. It's as much about a lot of this. We've got a lot of supplementary planning guidance still to follow on, I think, for this. Just to get an idea when that'll start to come. Will that come through the next year? We'll have to wait for the local development plan to come back, I would imagine. You see quite a chunk of that, hopefully, before we get us back in August to November.
In terms of the statutory process, a number of the supplementary guidance documents are actually linked to policies. And obviously, if the policy has been considered for examination, the Council has to wait until the outcome of the reporter's consideration of the policy before we can update the supplementary guidance. There's a couple of areas. One was raised by Councillor Geddes earlier. There's obviously a forestry and woodland strategy, which, a bit like the interim policy on wind energy, we believe we can bring that back to committee and adopt it as council policy, and then adopt it as statutory guidance at later dates. Likewise, the Dumfries Conservation Area appraisal, we believe we can adopt that as council policy, and then it could become statutory guidance once the LDP is adopted. So broadly, we'll be trying to bring things back as quickly as we can, but in terms of when it becomes statutory guidance, that can only occur when the LDP is actually adopted.
Yeah, and just looking at the timetable on 117, and it's next August to November when it says consider and decide on examination recommendations. Does that mean that if the reporter recommends something, we don't actually have to?
It means actually the opposite. We have very little scope for challenging the reporter's recommendations. The reporter's findings are largely binding on the council under the new arrangements. And basically, there's a sort of 3-month period where once we receive the reporter's report, we're supposed to adopt the plan within 3 months. So really, the length of when the plan's going to be adopted will be determined by how quickly we get the report back from the reporters unit.
That is not right, because we don't really consider the side. We just have to accept and adopt, and then issue the changes so that the general public.
Well, we have to consider the report. I think there are exceptional circumstances where a reporter contradicted national guidance. There's 1 or 2 exceptions, but it's very, very unlikely that would occur. So we would have to consider the report and adopt the plan.
Can we go to the recommendations then? Members happy to agree the detail in the appendix, scheme in the appendix, yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. Okay, item number 10, which is the response to the Scottish Government's consultation on marine planning. I know there was a request, I think, from the Conservative group to the leader for a special meeting of full council, but obviously what that would have meant was the response to the consultation going beyond the closing date, which is the 13th of November. And obviously this has been on the agenda for PH&E now for some time, as members have spotted from e-agenda. I know the consultation began in July. All members would have received an email, I think, from Susan Neal in August informing us of the consultation process as well as the consultation meeting. So we've obviously had an opportunity to either give our own individual thoughts or to await the response today. I did circulate a copy of the draft response to all members of the council, asking if there's any feedback, or in fact if any member with this committee wished to speak at the committee today on the basis of the fact that there was any responses, presuming that people are channeling any comments they've got through this committee. I think the draft response, certainly personally, I think the draft response is very good. I think it covers what is quite a detailed document, but actually it focuses particularly on the 2 areas of real concern. I think members right across all groups around for 2 offshore wind developments, which I think a lot of us by surprise in that consultation document, but I'm pleased the response says on that. I think I've personally got concerns over the consultation process itself that's been adopted not by the council but obviously elsewhere, and we have some strength for that draft report.
I'll just make one point. Just page 131 and 132 have been printed the wrong way around, so it reads slightly better if they're in the right order.
Alistair, do you want to come in?
Thanks very much indeed, sir. You made reference just a couple of minutes ago there, to the issue of process, and I make no apologies, Chair, for repeating today what I repeated at a public meeting in Wigtown in relation to the previous botched, and I use the term advisedly, previous botched attempt, in dealing with this, this offshore development in Wigtown Bay. As far as I'm concerned, Chair, this process, in quotation marks, is fatally and fundamentally flawed because, for a start, not all of the information that should in fact have been made available has been made available for public consultation. And I made the point on the previous occasion, sir, in the presence of the retired QC who had been brought in to manage the mess that Marine Scotland had made of what they were proposing at that time. And he agreed, for the record, entirely with the submissions that I made on the night. And I would therefore, as I say, ignoring the substantives of it, leave it to other people to talk about these. I would therefore repeat what I've already said on that previous occasion. This process is fatally and fundamentally flawed because they couldn't get their act together and make sure, in fact, that all relevant information that should, in fact, have been in the public domain and been able to be commented upon by representatives, etc., was there. So that, on its own, Chair, as far as I'm concerned, renders this whole exercise fatally and fundamentally flawed. I'll leave it to other people, as I've already said, to comment, as it were, on the substantives of the proposals. But let me say, in passing for the record, I am not at all impressed with them either.
Is that Alistair? Anybody wish to raise any comments? George?
Actually, just a comment on the, well, I accept that it's a very good report, I think. I think there's one question which remains unanswered in it, is what are the long-term consequences of the fact if there are no extension, if there is not a wind farm in Loose Bay or an extension to Robin Rig, the consequences of that, could there be an extension to other wind farms across the Stewartry land area and Wigtonshire land area?
Do you want to comment on that point, Andrew?
I think this is specifically about offshore options, so it's quite different from onshore options. There are, I think the key thing to bear in mind, there's some really large offshore options being considered around the coast of Scotland. So the two that are in the Solway are probably two of the smaller schemes.
No, I think, sorry, Chair. It's just the consequences if we don't go ahead. What are the consequences if we say we don't want any offshore wind farms in the Solway Firth? Has it never been sort of thought about what the consequences could be for the landward areas round about the Solway Firth?
I think the thing is that this process has been driven by Marine Scotland, so it's like dealing with offshore renewables planning, and the onshore elements are dealt with through Scottish planning policy. So there's two separate processes involved in those things. Probably not. I'm not really the person that can give you the answer to that question.
Frankly, it would be guesswork, George, to be perfectly honest. That's my take on it. I mean, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. There won't be a lack of planning applications for onshore wind farms in the Stewartry area, irrespective of the decision that Marine Scotland take on this one. So, but I think it's impossible to tell. There are in the whole document there are proposals for all sorts of offshore developments right across Scotland. So, which ones will get taken, which ones won't get taken, what the impact will be. I think it's almost guesswork. To be perfectly honest.
Chair,
George, yeah.
I can totally accept that, and if that's what's being said, I mean, I've got to agree with what Alistair's saying about the whole process. Seems to be.
Okay, Jim, do you want to comment?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The area I'm looking at is the offshore wind at the bottom of Loose Bay, but there's also the other area within that area that's coded TSW1. I don't have any real problem with the TSW1, considering it is going to be tidal turbine, etc., etc. However, consequences of putting them there would need to be better explained than what it's been in the consultation document that was put out. The big problem I have with the OWSW1 is in the consultation document that they put out, they said the significant strategic issues are public acceptability, environmental and visual impact. An additional socio-economic assessment suggests that there is little or no potential for regional economic benefit and indeed that there is a possibility of adverse economic impacts. That was when they were referring to Wigton Bay. Can somebody please tell me why those allowed Wigton Bay to be taken out, but they have then put in Loose Bay, which is just one bay along? The same argument that ruled out Wigton Bay rules out Loose Bay, because you have exactly the same impacts there as what you have in Wigton Bay. And I think the last sentence in page 128 should actually be strengthened. What we've got here is the introduction of a further scheme at Loose Bay requires further explanation in the plan, including any socio-economic benefits and environmental impacts. I would like to see that more along the lines of, I'll leave it up to officers to say it nicely, but more along the lines of going to tell me why the impacts that you ruled out Wigton Bay for don't actually go for Loose Bay. Literally, it looks as if they've just moved the Wigton Bay proposal one bay along. So I think that last sentence in the second last paragraph in page 128 actually needs to be strengthened, but I'll leave officers up to how to say it nicely.
Quite like the idea of having the phrase "going to tell me why" in the document, but I'm sure Andrew will come up with better phraseology. Alistair, do you want to come in?
Thanks, sir. Just briefly, to say in response to George's comment, I would be a bit apprehensive, sir, about us trying to take up a position which says that we're opposed to all such developments. I think what we've got to do, Chair, is to look at each individual application, each set of proposals on their merits. Now, I have no compunction in doing so and trying to batter them into submission at that time. But at the end of the day, I think we leave ourselves open, sir, to the charge of predetermination if we go down that route today. And I would want to shy away from that. Let's look at each raft of proposals as they come forward, because I suspect, perhaps regrettably, that this will not be the last attempt that they'll make to foist what some of us regard as ill-thought-out, ill-conceived and ill-considered proposals on us. Having said that, sir, again, I am more than willing to look meaningfully at the issue of sort of tidal type generation facilities. In fact, it might just be worthwhile for a change trying to put us, this part of the world, at the cutting edge of what is still very much embryonic technology. I mean, I remember when these proposals were first mooted, Chair, we talked about the turbines and all the rest of it, and how they were going to be, they were going to be sort of manufactured, for want of a better term, in Creetown at industrial premises in the village. And the more cynical among us said, "Aye, we've heard all that before," and regrettably we were proven right. But ever the optimist, it might just be that if in fact we were talking about the development of such proposals, we should in fact be trying to make a case, as it were, to get some of the economic benefit conferred upon this area and get quality, as it were, jobs arising from it as a consequence. I can always dream, Chair.
I think it's important, you're right, we have to deal with the schemes in front of us, and there are effectively, I suppose, three main schemes there. But in terms of taking the tidal one effectively separate from the others, I think I'm right in saying that TSW1 is linked with one of the offshore wind developments in some shape or form, so that it's difficult to take the two separately. Is that right?
It's my understanding that they cover the same area, but I think the tidal, you could be supportive of the tidal scheme and object to the wind farm.
Do you think that the response as things currently stands is adequate then, from what you're saying, Alistair?
Well, yeah, as I say, I'm not going to rock any, no pun intended, sir. I'm not going to try and rock any boats over it. I think, we're right to be concerned, right to be apprehensive. What I really would say, though, is that, if in fact we could get, well thought out proposals, brought forward in relation to the tidal aspects of it, I certainly would be prepared to subject these to much more meaningful and detailed scrutiny on the basis, hopefully, of trying to derive some economic benefit, as it were, for that part of Dumfries and Galloway, if we can do that. But as I say, I'm not going to blur and obfuscate just exactly our stance at this moment in time, Chair. Let me make that clear to you.
Okay, I think to be fair, that certainly summed up in the conclusion that we are supportive of the of TSW1. It's obviously the offshore wind farms that we are objecting to strongly. Yeah. Patsy.
Can I just ask on the title one, because if you look on page 129 from the Kukubri Harbour Master, they are looking at a potential loss of landing economic benefits for the rest of it. And Kukubri is a really good, thriving harbour, and I would hate to see anything be put in place that jeopardise the viability of that as a working harbour, because it's fundamental to the maintenance of Kukubri as oil. Really, really important. So I think I would be reluctant to go in and say, yes, we don't have any objections to that, but we don't actually know much about it and what the impacts would be. I would be very that. The other thing is, I just think we need to, if you look at page 128, when it was the previous response, and at the last sentence of the paragraph in the middle, it says, as a result, the Scottish ministers have decided that the Solway Firth and Wigton Bay sites are unsuitable for the development of offshore wind and should not be progressed as part of the marine plan. I don't know what's changed. I don't know what's come forward that has made that any different. And I just think we need to focus on that and strongly say that we still support that. We went through a huge amount of discussion and themed evenings. In Kukubri, you had them in Wigton. There was a lot of work went into it. There was a lot of people there, a lot of good debate about it, and that was the result of it. And I think we should recite that. I think that was a really important consultation time, and we tend to just be thinking, well, that was then and now, but only 2 years ago. And it was categorically taken out, and the people who really put forward a good case why it should be had thought that was that. And the real reason it's come back on the agenda again, and it's just almost sort of gliding through. And I think we need to put something really strongly that we absolutely supported that that conclusion of those consultations. But I am anxious that we don't just go gung-ho with the title. I would like to know what the impact might be on the fishing industry.
I'll let Jim in at this point.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with Patsy. That's why I would like more information on what would happen with the tidal and wave. I can answer your question on what's changed. They've moved the proposals for Wigton Bay to Luce Bay. That's what's changed. And that's why I'm saying we need to point out that the same argument that was put forward for Wigton Bay, that they accepted, stands for Luce Bay, if not even more so.
But nothing's changed in the Solway Firth. Like that to be really well emphasised. I mean, nothing has changed.
The key thing here is the response has got to be in by tomorrow, so we need, so probably, yeah. Just picking up on, at the moment, the tidal section says, thirdly, TS1, the tidal proposal in the plan, the council is generally supportive of this option. It sounds like that just maybe needs to be maybe supportive of the potential. However, the council still has serious concerns about the economic impact, particularly on Kukubri Harbour.
Problem with the concept of tidal, I mean, I think it's fine, but when you get the harbour master saying it could have an impact on lost landing, you have to take notice of that.
Ian, and then Ian.
Thanks, Chair, and apologies for late arrival. I agree with Jim. If this is what it is, that we said emphatically no to Wigton and it's moved to Luce Bay, then the same response has got to be made loud and clear. My question is about tidal power. My understanding is that the reason why wind turbines have been progressed, because that's where the commercial viability of renewables is at present, and it's not the case with the tidal turbines. Indeed, I think 2 or 3 years ago, I spoke to a representative of one of the development companies who said they were looking at probably a minimum of 10 years before they would establish the commercial viability of it. Now, given that, are we at a stage where we can even assess what the potential impacts of turbines, because we don't even know probably at this stage where they've got to be placed and what size they are, or really anything about them. So I think Andrew's comment was probably right. We're broadly supportive of the potential and the concept, but I think we need an awful lot more information just about what exactly these turbines are and where they're likely to be placed for maximum effect.
Okay, Ian, and then Craig.
Thank you, Chairman. I think most of it's been covered. I think there is potential for there to be an adverse impact on the fisheries industry up through the Solway. This was actually picked up on, Councillor Brodie and myself attended a Scottish Sea Salmon Net Fisheries Association up in Dunkeld a couple of weeks ago, their annual general meeting. This was brought up at there, and they reckon that what's already there in place has an effect on the salmon flow as it comes in through right up into the rivers and that as it comes in. But the thing that has been, I mean, they're certainly putting an objection. I wonder what Solway Firth Partnerships, what their view is on this. But if process, I don't see in our response a failure in the process when it comes to the consultation and a lack of or poor consultation. Should that be something that we need to emphasise on, if that can be added at this late point? It's certainly come from members, but we've certainly got a view in regards to how we feel we've been consulted, if it's been done in the proper manner or not, and how much weight would that have when the Scottish Government look at this?
Thanks, Chair. With regards to the tidal energy, I mean, I have no problem with what we have in front of us at the moment, but there's been work ongoing now for at least 3 years of a proposed Solway barrage coming across from Annan, going across to Solway Firth at that particular point. Now, there's no mention of it here in this consultation, and I wonder, does that mean that Scottish Government have completely discounted that proposal? I know there's been preliminary works going on now with turbine designs and many things for a good few years now going across from Annan. So it's just a question. It's another proposal that could be included within this, but there's no mention of it. So have Scottish Government completely discounted it, or are they unaware of it possibly?
That issue came up at the Dumfries consultation event that took place, and the answer from Marine Scotland was that they haven't considered a specific proposal. I mean, I think there has been work, particularly being pushed from the south of the Solway. I know Scottish Enterprise have been involved in the past, but there is no firm proposal, and that was the answer that was given on that aspect.
Ian?
Just to come back on that, because there's an outstanding action on this committee, and it's to get a presentation from Nigel Catterson, I think it is, who is the lead south of the border on the Solway Barrage project. So I wonder if we could have, it's tenuous link I suppose, but could we have got that addressed and maybe get a chance, see if he's available to come forward, because it is getting work from both sides of the borders, but I know Nigel's the main contact for that. And we did make a decision about two and a half years ago to get a presentation to this committee. It's never been forthcoming yet.
Something we can investigate. Okay, Finlay?
Just very briefly, I'd just like to add my concerns about the council being generally supportive of the option of tidal power. We've actually got absolutely no idea what's involved, and I would be very cautious and welcoming any sort of development without further facts. So I think that needs to be expressed in the consultation, just from what we've heard in the last couple of minutes.
Okay, you want to come in there, Alistair?
I would indeed, sir, because I mean, my understanding is that we haven't taken up a position, in fact, of welcoming. We've listened to the caveats, and what I'm saying is that, if we want to look at that, by all means, but you look at it and you subject it to objective and detailed scrutiny, and you add up the pros and you add up the cons, and I'm well aware of the potential impact that it could have, for instance, in the likes of landing in Kirkcudbright. And that's the last thing I would hope anyone in this chamber chair would want to do, would be to interfere with the success of the landings and the fishing activity which comes out from that particular port. All I'm saying is that, and I said earlier, that I would have I don't want to see us take up a predetermined position, has been fundamentally opposed to any of these. I would be prepared at the appropriate time in the light of specific proposals to look critically, and I would hope objectively, at the likes of tidal barrage type etc. schemes. But as part of that process, sir, making quite clear what the pros are that we perceive and what the cons are, and then come to a balanced and sustainable decision on the back of it. So if anything I said earlier has created the impression that, I think Patsy used the term gung-ho. I was not suggesting for one moment to go gung-ho about anything. But let's look and let's see, but mindful and knowledgeable of the caveats and the downsides as well as the potential benefits. I hope I've made my position clear, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Right, I think that's all, members. I think we've obviously got a number of issues we'll need to address in terms of giving direction, obviously, to Andrew in completing this final response, because obviously it does need to be in the next 24 hours. But I think we've got a number of general points. I think the first point that was raised is the lack of details in the original plan document. For example, it didn't even tell us, I think, that the tidal project was turbines. That detail was missing. So I think in terms of taking the response, I think by and large we're happy with the response, but to add in a number of things. And the first thing to add in is an expression of concern over the lack of details. And I think that's one example to highlight, that we effectively took the public meeting in Dumfries to tell us it was turbines for that particular project. I think the second key point, and members can come in and keep me right if I miss anything, but the second key point is that the message we want to send is that frankly nothing has changed in terms of our previous opposition. The views of the local community and the views of the council remain the same. Just because you've moved one project one bay up doesn't actually change the principle of our opposition. And I think we have to be very robust in our concern that that has been put back into the plan when the reality is nothing has actually changed at all. Finally, in relation to the tidal proposal, the main conclusion talks about is generally supportive. It may very well be that we change that to the council is not opposed in principle to the tidal proposal. However, we've got a number of concerns in relation to, and maybe go back to the one around Kirkcudbright Harbour and the navigational issue that's raised there. And crucially, not all the issues appear to have been addressed, which is I think you've got in your original draft, basically. So 3 points: lack of detail, our opposition to the two offshore developments still remain, irrespective of where they are, because you've simply moved one and the arguments are the same. And finally, we're not against the tidal proposal in principle, but we've got some serious concerns, and the lack of detail again is the main issue. Does that encapsulate the views of the committee? Alistair, do you want to come in, Ian?
Sir, but can I also suggest that we'll perhaps try to get the phraseology in there, a fundamentally flawed process, or a fatally flawed process? Please.
I think that would be general view. Ian? Yeah, okay. Okay. Does that give you clear direction, Andrew? Yeah. Okay, and we'll circulate the final copy to members. You can have a copy of that. Okay, thanks very much. I think that covers the recommendations, and yeah, well, agreed the draft response, but with amendments as read out. Okay, can we move on to item number 11, please, which is the GoSmart project. This report, I suppose, largely comes from a number of concerns that certainly Labour councillors have expressed in the past about wishing to have more details about the actual spend on the GoSmart scheme, and actually very specific details around what we actually mean by the rollout programme. I think it's fair to say that the rollout programme is relatively modest, involving around £9,000 of an external grant, as opposed to try to roll out some of the projects that certainly in my view have not been a big success in Dumfries, primarily, for example, the Bike to Go scheme. But I wonder if anybody wishes to add to the report.
No, Chair. All I would add to the report, Chair, is to advise members that the Cycling Scotland's report on local authorities' cycling policy and provision has been published, and I'll place some copies in the members' lounge and put details of the internet link to the report itself on Briefcase as well. It rates all of the local authorities in Scotland in terms of their provision and policy, and Dumfries and Galloway comes up with 3 stars out of 5, which is more or less at the kind of median position. There are authorities performing worse, there are authorities performing better, but the GoSmart project is highlighted as an example of good practice within that document. So just a bit further information. Happy to take any questions on the detail within the report.
I did read that report. Parts of it I agreed with, parts of it I didn't agree with. Do we have any questions? Patsy?
And it's the grant funding that's been allocated of 158,000. And I look the list of priority use of this funding, including minor works in Kukubri and Dalbeattie, which, as you say, Kukubri, Dalbeattie, and I think the other two come to the grand total of £9,000, and most of it seems to be on leaflets and maps and things, which leaves £149,000 that I don't know what it's doing. And I would have thought, if it says it's including minor works, well, I'd have thought that would have been sort of pavement improvements or drop curbs or better bus stops or something like that. Leaflets they're sort of rather old school, really, are they not? I thought we'd left them behind in the last century.
The schemes were they not set out in September, I think? Was that? With the schemes that money refers to, were they not discussed at the committee in September, I think? Were they?
Excuse me, but I wasn't here then, so I am just wanting to follow up. But it was just the fact that there's a big chunk of money there for grant and not very much of it being spent, and I don't see where the rest of it is going. And I rather hope a lot of it's going to Kukubri. But
These are two separate elements of grant. The 9,229 is the amount of grant that's been allocated to Smarter Choices, Smarter Places initiatives, and therefore associated with the Go Smart project directly. And that's the kind of the publicity and assistance with provision of leaflets and local mapping. The 158,000 is part of the wider cycling and walking safer streets projects, which could some of which projects will be in Kirkgubri, Dalbeattie, and will be linked into the Go Smart project in terms of publicity and information. But the 9,200 is essentially the element that's Go Smart, and it's very much about getting the communities aware of what's happening in terms of development in their community and what's already there. So two separate funding streams.
So could you just help me with the list of priorities for using this funding, including minor works in Kukubri? What would they be?
I can't give you the detail on that at this point in time, but I can certainly provide that to you.
Okay, Ronnie?
Yeah. You can maybe clarify for me the question in the car club. I've asked questions before regarding the car club, and I haven't quite got my head round it. It might just be me, myself. This car club is funded by Swestrans. Is it? Then there's £85,540 funded by Swestrans. Who funds Swestrans? And the council is a corporate member of the car club. Do we block book the cars? In other words, do we actually fund it ourselves again through that scheme? I'm just trying to get to the right figures for the usage, who actually uses the car club itself, and how it's funded.
Okay, the funding element from the Go Smart programme came from Swestrans for the car club. Swestrans is funded primarily by the council, but there is some funding comes in from Scottish Government as well. The council is a corporate member of the car club, and that was agreed by the council back in 2009, I think it was, that the council would participate in the car club when it was first put forward as a project within Go Smart. The council block books 4 of the 6 cars, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and that's used to supplement the existing car pool provision. The success or otherwise of car clubs so far, in terms of what you would normally look for a viable car club, is around about 22% utilisation. It's currently past that mark within a year of establishment, which is one of 2 most successful car clubs within the Coalwheels brand so far. They're very pleased with the rate at which they've got to the 22% mark utilisation. Coalwheels are there for a 3-year period under the contract that's been agreed. So the only funding that's now going into the car club is the contribution that the council makes as a block booker of those 4 cars. The rest of it is anticipated now to come in from public membership.
I think that, thanks very much. That's clarified it, and it's clear in my mind now that we actually funded it through Swestrans, and we're still funding it through the block booking system. It's just to get clarity about how it's worked.
Just continuing on that Appendix 1, the final heading Park and Choose. The others have all got the numbers of members and usage. That one doesn't. Has that been truncated?
There's been no formal report on utilisation of these park and choose sites because of the difficulties, I think, in terms of the in terms of monitoring them. They are spread out, and there's been no assessment in terms of the general usage as of yet.
Okay, Finlay.
Thank you. Appendix 1 again, it's the bike to go. I know that there's certainly been a lot of criticism of the project from our chair here for one. What are your expectations of this scheme going forward? Have the problems been down to marketing or awareness? I've certainly been aware that there's been new signs put up on the Glen just yesterday morning or this morning promoting the park and ride or cycles. How long have the bikes been at? I presume they're at the Garrick. How long have they been there, and why was the signage not put up far sooner than it has been?
The park and choose site, there's 2 at the Garrick. There's one actually within the depot itself with provision for bikes to be used by council staff for getting to and from the Garrick. And there's a park and choose site for public use just outside the gates of the depot as well. And those, I think, were put in place just prior to the end of last financial year. The signage is been put out by the company that has the contract for maintaining the cycles. And as to why it's taken so long, I think we'll need to take that up with them. In terms of the remainder of the Bike to Go project, the contract with the provider lasts until September next year, September 2014, and thereafter the infrastructure and the bikes belong to the council. They pass into council ownership or remain in council ownership thereafter. So we are looking at, officers are looking at the potential for reaching an agreement locally potentially with a local provider who could maintain the bikes or similar provision using the infrastructure that's there. The infrastructure surrounding the town and within the town provides for bike stances for parking of bikes. Now, I think it's fair to say that the utilisation, everyone probably recognises that the utilisation of these bikes has been fairly disappointing in terms of what was originally hoped for. But the concept of a free bike scheme has proven to work elsewhere, whether it's because Dumfries is smaller, whether it's because Dumfries is in a wet area of the country, or whether it's because the marketing hasn't been terribly great up to now. We really need to look a bit further. But I think there is potential for reaching an agreement locally with somebody who can be more on the ground. The current provider, who was appointed through a competitive process, is based in the south of England, and their ability to react to not to emergencies but to call-outs to deal with damage to bikes is very limited. So I think it would be much preferable if it's a local solution arrived at from the termination of the contract next year.
So we get a report back in September, but I'm very clear I don't want to see more taxpayers' money being used in a scheme that has had a fair innings, quite frankly, and not taken off. And I don't think the public would accept that either. We could debate the reasons why it's not taken off in terms of the size of Dumfries, the demand, but the reality is it hasn't worked, and we shouldn't be putting any more taxpayers' money in it, in my view. Obviously, we'll get a report in September when that contract comes to an end, and hopefully we can find a third party who may wish to take that forward if they so choose. John?
It's just on that. Do we really actually believe that somebody's got to come in and take over that contract? considering that 88% of the usage that we had was free usage. As I say, you're talking about 12% actually paying for to use these bikes. So do I honestly actually think that somebody's got to come in to take that contract? I know myself, I've got them in Georgetown, and the distance most of the people in Georgetown would need to walk to get that bike, it's just absolutely crazy. And I would reckon that's part of the reason why certainly the usage in Georgetown is absolutely, really, I would imagine really, really low.
I don't think we'd really be wanting to second guess the outcome of any negotiation we can do locally. There is potentially some other development happening, particularly at the rail station at the minute, in terms of evaluation of the potential for having some form of cycle hub there, which could be the two initiatives could be taken forward together. And if that, I think there'll be some kind of benefits of scale if the two can be tied together. That's something that Scott really are looking at taking forward. But these things could develop over the course of the next year or so.
Okay, Ian.
Thanks, Chair. I think certainly my impression is that the marketing hasn't been good, and I think the fact that we actually don't know why it hasn't worked as successfully as it might have done is a bit disappointing. I think that probably ought to have been started right at the outset of the scheme so that we could evaluate it. One question on page 143, the promotion of salary sacrifice schemes to employers. Is there any facility whereby any of the organisations, perhaps in the third sector that are council funded, where their employees could have access to this scheme?
Yes, there is, and that's been part of the Go Smart scheme from the start. There are a number of organisations have taken up salary sacrifice schemes, and will continue to be part of the promotion.
Sorry, if you could just indulge me just to come back. I mean, the reason I ask is because I actually had a request at one of my surgeries from an employee of a third sector organisation, and he'd been told no, it was only open to council employees.
Yeah, it's open for third sector organisations to establish a salary sacrifice scheme. It's not open for them to come into the council scheme.
Can we turn to the recommendations then? Are we happy to agree that the core elements of the project as detailed at 3.6, a list of elements there, we're quite happy with, they'll be the core of Go Smart going forward? Members happy with that? Okay. And 2.2, happy to agree the rollout programme is set out in Appendix 2. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, folks, can we turn to item number 12, which is the rural transport solutions, which I think was touched on in the earlier report. I have to say, I think this is a very positive report. I think the pilot scheme has worked incredibly well, and I certainly would be keen to see this rolled out across the region as quickly as possible. There may be some issues around the timescale because I think Jim picked up in the business plan talking about March 2015, but my reading of this report talked about March 2014, so maybe that could be dealt with in the discussion. But is there anything you want to add to the report?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Within the report, we do refer to a grant application that's been made to the Transport Scotland under the Scottish Bus Fund. The Transport Scotland have not yet reached a determination on that, but we have had discussions with them about the timelines and the responsibilities within the project. I think I would be very hopeful of a positive outcome from that. I spoke to Transport Scotland this morning, and they say there should be definitely be a decision by the end of the calendar year, but they're still in the process of discussing applications with a number of other authorities at the minute. In terms of the timelines, the report does refer to a number of timelines with March 2014 as the date. As I suggested earlier, that this would be very much about setting up the projects for rollout from March 2014. So links with health and social care trips at Galloway Community Hospital, start point really for that March 2014 and rollout thereafter, and similarly down the blocks. the project coordinator would be hopefully, if we can get the confirmation of the grant soon enough, then the project coordinator should be in post by the start of the next financial year and ready to take things forward. But happy to take any other questions.
Any members got any questions? Okay, Ronnie and Jim.
Hi, Harry. I'm still not sure about the timeline. I've got the piece of paper from the previous report, and due date changed from September 2013 to March 2015. And then when you look at, and I know you're saying that this is one's commissioning and one's actually delivery. So just explain to me again, what's going to happen in item 12 on March, January, all the dates there? You know, what will we see on the ground?
Right. So in essentially December 2013, the anticipation would be that the Stranraer ARC arrangements would be put in place on a more permanent basis. It's been very much done as a pilot up to now, and I'll be looking for that to be consolidated from December. Bearing in mind that we still don't have confirmation of grant there. Extension of the Newton Stewart ARC arrangements to be put in place from January 2014, but obviously rolling out from there. And similarly with the Galloway Community Hospital, looking to have agreement on a way forward there from March, but not necessarily have everything in place. And similarly with the other areas, the March 2014 dates are very much about having things ready to go, but not necessarily fully in place.
That's fine. So in the previous report, the commissioning has been put back to 2015. So these will be all pilots in effect, and if it works, we commission it proper and give it some funding.
The commissioning for community transport is not necessarily the total solution for, rural transport solutions is not necessarily the total solution for commissioning a community transport. It's one tool in terms of commissioning community transport, but we've not yet been able to do the work, the full work on community transport to say that rural transport solutions would be a complete answer to it. There may be community transport groups that don't wish to be part of the Rural Transport Solutions project, and it may be that they simply don't form part of the commissioning process at the end of the day, but that piece of work still needs to be done.
You're not getting back in, Ronnie. I'll write it down for you after. Fine. Very clear. I do. I like to know what it means. No, I mean, it is very, I mean, it's not necessarily the same thing as community transport. The Rural Transport Solutions, it brings together a number of organisations to try to deal with things. I mean, a simple thing like sometimes an appointment at the hospital doesn't tie in with public transport. How do we resolve that? How do we best utilise the vehicles we've got? Yeah, that's fine. Good. No, don't use your mic now. It's okay. Okay, Jim, do you want to come in?
Aye, thanks. Yeah, just one, and probably it's simply because of the space provided that it doesn't feature, but on page 148, 3.6, where it talks about areas, you talk about consolidation at Stranraer ARC for Wigtonshire, Stewartry consolidation at Castle Douglas ARC, Andale and Eskdale makes reference to ARC, and yet in this there's an ARC in Kirkconnell, and there's one in Dumfries that doesn't feature. There are also, and I understand there's a great opportunity to work with East Ayrshire, and I'm pleased that's in there because they have a whole fleet of vehicles that are sponsored or subsidised by the Coalfield Regeneration Trust, among other organisations. So I understand there's an opportunity that's maybe different for Nithsdale than other areas, but it frightens me when Kirkconnell ARC and Dumfries ARC isn't featured in the same paper as ARCs right across the region elsewhere. And I just want assurance that they will be included and that they will be part of the overall rural transport solution that's brought forward, because I know that the ARC in Kirkconnell has a vehicle and there should be an opportunity to utilise that the same as elsewhere, and that would benefit the whole community. So I just want an assurance that it's just simply space and other information that excludes it rather than intention for it not to be used part of the structure.
Yes.
Thanks, Chair.
Dumfries specifically hasn't been referred to because the transport requirements for Dumfries, given the geography of the town, are quite different from the more rural areas.
Finlay, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Just to confirm that the Glencairns Transport Initiative will be the organisation that's delivering what's in table 148 as an organisation. It's also described as Stewardship and Glencairns Transport Initiative. Do you see that organisation changing from just being purely Glencairns?
I think it's a very fluid and organic process. There's very little community transport provision in the Stewardship other than the Glencairns initiative, and the Kirkcudbright Community Centre operates a community transport bus, but there's not really much provision elsewhere. So it's potentially it's an opportunity for an organisation to expand. Potentially it's an opportunity for other communities to establish community transport groups. It's something, again, we would be looking to work with communities and organisations over the period of the project.
Okay, if there's no any further questions, let's go to the recommendation. Members happy to agree the rollout programme? Yeah. Okay, I think this is a positive one. You'll all have seen the report in May 2030 on the pilot scheme. I think it'd be good to get this rolled out across other parts of the region. So that's a positive response. Thanks very much. Okay, item number 13, the proposal to have a publicly accessible electric vehicle charging infrastructure in Brooms Road car park in Dumfries for anybody that's got an electric car. Do we have anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add at this point, Chair.
Do members have any questions? Ian?
Just a small one. What is the actual demand for this? Because I think you're almost touching on it there.
Very good question.
The demand is not quantified at this point in time. Our suspicion is that there are very few, if any, fully electric vehicles owned by private motorists in the Dumfries and Galloway region. The idea behind the nationwide infrastructure, however, is for a network of charging points. It wouldn't necessarily be for people based in the region who would normally charge their cars at home, but it is very much to enable people to travel longer distances than they currently can by access to very fast chargers, 20-minute charges, so that they do their 55, 60 miles, charge up, and then press on after they've got their car up to charge again.
Yeah, Ronnie?
That clearly excludes people from Stranraer.
Do you know anyone in Stranraer with an electric car? No. They've got a very good electric bus, which I've seen in action the other day there. Questions? Finlay?
Just very quickly, this is a chicken and egg thing. It's like build it and they will come. If we don't have an electric charging point, we're not going to get people coming into the area with these. So I welcome anything that's going to encourage the greener energy. So I'm very much in favour of this as a starting point.
Okay, so Craig.
Just a small point, the offer of grant which we are asked to accept, would that cover the full cost of installing the
At this point in time, I can't say. Part of the reason for bringing the report forward was to get approval of the use of these spaces. Part of the further work we need to do is get a detailed survey done in terms of the power supply at these spaces. There is an electric supply very close by the location for these parking spaces, which is, whether there's sufficient supply there or not, we don't know at this point in time, but we do need to get the surveys done as quickly as we can, because the grant was only announced halfway through the financial year.
Jeff?
Just in terms of setting these three spaces aside, will this be monitored? I mean, if we haven't actually got an electric car in Dumfries and Galloway, and we've got 3 parking spaces which are permanently empty, then how do we approach that?
I think, as Councillor Carson suggested, it is chicken and egg. I think there is no doubt that although there may be no electric vehicles in the area at the minute, the technology is improving. The capacity of the vehicles in terms of their potential mileage for a charge and the cost of the vehicles is increasing and the cost of the vehicles is reducing. So I think it would be fair to say that within 2 or 3 years there will definitely be some electric vehicles in use, probably around the Dumfries area, but also more widely in the country and the region. So we will need to monitor the utilisation of these spaces. If anybody's been to Ayr recently within one of the car parks in the town centre at Ayr, there are spaces set aside for electric vehicles with charging points. that's actually a doable journey in an electric vehicle on a charge at the minute. So you could go up to Ayr, recharge your car and come back down the road.
So basically, if you want to get yourself a parking space in Dumfries Town Centre any day, buy yourself an electric car, or 3. Okay, do we have any other questions? No. Okay, can we turn to the recommendation? Are we happy to, and be very clear, this is a grant to us and not coming out of the budget of the department. We're happy to note the offer of the grant and to agree this be installed in Brooms Road car park. And we'll watch it carefully. Okay. Okay, can we turn to item number 14? Obviously, this is an important one. I'm very clear that as a committee, we need to be focused on the issues around. I'm aware that time's getting on, and I'm aware that you're hungry, Jim, but I'm also aware that there's a Housing Committee meeting at 2 o'clock, so you could break for lunch if you wish, or we can continue with the last couple of items and then break before the Housing Committee. I'm open to members. Continue? Yeah, okay. Right, we'll continue. Okay, I mean, this is an important report. I mean, I'm clear that the committee needs to focus on a role, a strategic role. It's not for us to debate, I suppose, every pothole that comes up. That's a matter for DG First Committee. So we have to be clear what our role is in the strategic side of things. But at the same time, in order to do that, we have to be absolutely happy and satisfied that what we're actually commissioning is exactly what members want to see. So this is an important report. You have to be clear you're happy with this commission, obviously, before it goes forward. If there's anything not included in it that needs to be included in it, then we have to have that discussion today. So can I ask if anybody's got anything to add to the report? No. Okay, can I open it up to members then? Ian.
Thanks, yeah, just to pick up to, it's for Stephen in particular, but just to give us the gist, because we have asked in the past to make sure we get all the maintenance, we get the whole budget included through our commissioning and delivering as we're getting set up. Just the difference between previous commissions and this one, I'm trying to get different appendices, going back, looking, reflecting, and different things we've agreed in the past, but I haven't got down to everything, so if you could just outline that if that's possible, Stephen.
I think just thinking about the 10 commissions that are before you here in terms of the budgets, I'm not envisaging that there's any significant changes, particularly on the revenue side. There was a bit of a reduction on the revenue side in the roads maintenance within the road service budget. The capital figures there will reflect what's reported to this committee in each of the commissions where that's appropriate against the various programmes, and I suppose that does fluctuate slightly over years as the priorities move about a bit, or as additional funding is put towards particular asset groups. But apart from that, I'm not aware of any other kind of significant changes on the levels of funding for the commissions between these commissions that we're looking at. Effectively, the commissions we're looking at kind of a rolling 3-year commission. So we're looking at a 3-year period, but we're trying to reflect the in-year financial position on the commission. So compared to the commissions that were agreed back in October 12 by this committee, I don't envisage that there's a great difference in terms of the funding available for any of the commissions in particular.
Okay. No, thanks. Well, happy enough for that. Just it's in regards to the processes, because we're moving towards budget and different budgets being allocated as we go forward through the budget process. That'll have an effect on this. So therefore, when do we get a chance to revisit this according to the budgets that are allocated come February time? Will we get another chance? Will we see us back in March time, something like that?
I see the commissions and the agreement of them being an annual process, and it tends to be that we're going before the end of the calendar year. We've been going to area committees with the 6 monthly performance in the new year and in the springtime. After the end of the financial year, we've gone with a kind of 12-month performance. We've then kind of captured the feedback from those 2 6-monthly sessions at area committee and brought them to this committee and then agreed how the commissions might evolve. And so I'm kind of closing out the kind of loop on this set of commissions by taking on board what we agreed at September in this committee based on what had happened at area committees, the monitoring that we looked at in the October meeting of this committee, and then letting that influence the commissions that are before us. So I would imagine that it is probably typically about this time of year or maybe slightly earlier that we would be bringing back a refresh of the commissions. Certainly in terms of the budgets and the budget setting process, We have a report to this committee a week tomorrow on the service review process, and that will deal with some of the issues on the commissions and some of the options considering the budget setting process. If there are significant changes on the commissions for next year, then that's certainly something that we would communicate to DG First, and we'd be working towards as part of implementing the budget setting process and the decisions that are made. We'd be working towards implementing any changes in the commissions.
Jeff.
Just in terms of the total tonnage of commercial waste collected annually on page 175, does that include the blue bags which are used by commercial properties in the town centre, etc.?
Yes, in terms of blue bags, that's including the total tonnage. We use a conversion for the effective volume of the bag to convert that into tonnage.
Any other questions from members? Finlay.
Regarding the waste collection service, or to provide a waste reuse recycling and recovery service, I know we're going to go through some quite dramatic changes over the next couple of years, and starting off in Wigtonshire. There's one item where it suggests that, if I can just find it, we set up a reuse and repair network, and there's obviously some budget set aside for that. What I would like to have seen was some budget set aside for dealing with some of the food waste that we currently have to ship out the region, and some project that would look at getting local landowners or farmers, whatever, to look at anaerobic digestion. Could that possibly be something that's looked at after we start to implement the service in Wigtonshire?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an idea I've certainly been considering around how the council could assist landowners to construct an AD plant within the area. Because through the contract work we've done, there is 3 facilities that are on a short list, and they're all out with the region. So I think there's some potential around reducing transport costs and utilising a local business in that respect. How we go about that is perhaps more challenging. It's something that we need to take away and discuss with my colleagues about how we may approach that.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll move to... Sorry, Patsy.
Could I just ask on it's on page 225, and it's to do with burial ground and interment services. Are we subsidising this by nearly 700,000?
I think effectively the service, the costs to provide the service are not recovered. There is effectively a subsidy in the process. The charges that are raised do not cover the cost to provide the full burial grounds and interment service, whether that's actually the interment part itself or the grounds maintenance or the kind of future acquisition of areas of land. But the charges are not set at a level that covers the costs for the complete service.
Sorry, Chair, do you not think that's a mistake?
It's certainly up to any group to bring forward budget proposals to redress that if you so wish. I mean, I think just from a general point, I think there is a piece of work to be done across the whole council in relation to charges, and it's certainly something the administration have been discussing, and that's around the fact that what we should do effectively, and it's partly done already, is that we assess the cost of providing all the services that we actually currently charge for. So what is the cost of providing those services, and what would the charges be? And then effectively as councillors we have to take a proactive decision as to which ones we subsidise and which ones we don't. We will always, for example, subsidise a swim because you'll never be able to charge enough to actually fund all the swimming pools across the region and the cost of that, and that's something most councils choose to do. But there needs to be a piece of work, and other authorities have actually done it, a piece of work whereby you do calculate how much it costs to provide the services we charge for, and then you know which ones you choose to subsidise and which ones you choose not to. And I think that's a piece of work that needs to be done. Very often a charge is there because it's always been there, and it's that amount because it's always been that amount plus whatever 2-3% we increase it every year. But let's look at how much it actually costs to provide a service, and then you take a decision as to which ones you subsidise. I think that's a piece of work that needs to happen across all departments, and it's certainly something the administration are pushing to take forward as part of the budget setting process.
Sorry, just to follow up on that, on the earlier thing on, what was it called, the half-year summary planning, you know, there is a burial strategy in there, but the progress is 6%, so we haven't looked at it in any great way, according to this, depending how accurate it is. So maybe that is something that should be being done as well. But I just think that is, I think that's ridiculous. We should be subsidising it to that extent. So perhaps the unconfused Conservative Party will bring that forward as part of their budget.
Yeah, I mean, that is an activity, the preparation of the burial strategy, that has been progressing. It's one of those areas, and again, this will come out in the service review report for Infrastructure and Commissioning Service that's about to be released to the members, and we'll consider in a week's time. It does identify there are a number of areas of strategy that staff feel should be progressing faster to get a handle on the kind of appropriate capital investment. There's been a certain amount of work done in the past on trying to develop a burial strategy, and we're looking at refreshing that work and putting the appropriate resources onto it. And it's very much about looking at future provision for that service in terms of where capacity is required. The actual operation of the service is maybe more of an issue in terms of the costs, and the provision of the cost of the service is probably more of an issue for a bit of work with DG First on the kind of service reviews that they're taking forward in this area.
Okay, if there are no further questions, we'll move to the recommendations. Just to be clear, members happy to agree the commissions that are set out in appendices 1 to 10. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, item number 15, we're being asked to agree the Council's response to the National Litter Strategy. Just an observation, I mean, I actually noticed the other day that the Scottish Government actually published the outcome of this consultation process with their recommendations. I then, as soon as I seen that, double-checked the report today, and I did note in the report that it talks about the fact that this response has already been sent to the Scottish Government, obviously prior to their approval. So frankly, if you don't approve it today, you've got a bit of an issue, because the Scottish Government have obviously published the outcome of this. So I do think that just for future reference, it is important that the committee, you know, receives responses. I mean, I'm personally quite happy with the response, but it's obviously important the committee receives responses prior to clearly the closing date for this to go in, and certainly long before the Scottish Government come to their final conclusions on it. I think a lot of the conclusions are very much in line with what we're saying in our response, but I think it is important that when these consultations come out, sometimes they're very short, I appreciate that, but members should see them before the closing date. However, I'll open it to members, unless there's anything you wish to add to the report. Open it to members for any comments you may have on the report. Ian?
Just picking up on your point, Chairman, in regards to last week, I think it was quite innovative that, in fact, he sent it for the marine response that gave everybody a chance, and that type of process could be used in future for items like this, whether it's from yourself or whether it's from an officer. At least we then get a chance to respond beforehand, and it may or may not be put into the response if it's needed urgently.
Be polite and not point out the response was sent before I took over as chair, but that's I won't say that. Has anybody got any comments on the actual report? Okay, Alistair.
Pedantic as always, Chair. Change the recommendation to members are asked to approve the Council's previously submitted response. And just let's do that, accept it and get on with it.
Yeah, okay, happy to do that. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, item number 16, final item, is the road drainage prioritisation, planning and enforcement of legislation. This is obviously, again, quite an important report. We obviously have to be clear what the implications of this would be in practical terms before we actually agree to it. I think it's an important piece of work we need to take forward, but I think it'd be helpful that we're all absolutely clear what that will mean when people actually see letters arriving on their doorstep when it comes to enforcement. So I would ask members to be absolutely clear what we're actually proposing here. Can I ask if there's anything to add to the report itself? Okay, can I open it up to members then? Okay, Ian.
Thanks very much, Chairman. Well, just in regards to that comment what you made there, I'd like to hear more. I see what's in the report. I spoke to the National Farmers Union. They haven't been consulted on this, so they weren't aware of it, and obviously they'll represent a large number of landowners that where this would apply to in particular. So just it's the difference what we're proposing. If we just outline quite clearly the difference what we're proposing from where we are now, the stance we've took since the 84 Act came in, and how we're looking to progress that, and maybe be a bit firmer, and just what real effect will that have on landowners?
Chair, yeah, the National Farmers Union of Scotland have been involved in some consultation on this. Mike Fox has been in contact with Carolyn Lamb. Unfortunately, Mike's off at the moment on leave, so the email was sent back in October and asked, it'd been discussed, but further information was sent to Carolyn on what was proposed, a copy of the report and such like, and some more articles that have been available in the farming press about landowners' responsibilities under the legislation. I think I would reiterate that the legislation exists. We've been, I would probably say, weak as an authority in progressing landowners and anybody discharging water onto the public road. And in some cases that has presented us with challenges and costs that the council has met. I would also add that in terms of the situations where a solution is unachievable, that's not the situation where we would be as an authority hounding landowners to come up with something which we can't provide a solution for. We don't see this as we think the first two stages, the discussion and speaking with landowners, is going to resolve most of the issues, and that seems to be the feedback from Aberdeenshire Council, who basically we've taken this process from and changed Aberdeenshire to Dumfries and Galloway.
Ian.
Thanks, Chair. Just to very much welcome this report. I think it's an absolute vital part of our road asset management plan. Plan preventative maintenance, I think long term will hopefully start to reduce the need to be doing reactive repairs. And I think I've always felt keeping the water off the roads greatly assists in keeping their surface intact. So very pleased to see it, and particularly recommendation 2.2.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Got Finlay next.
Thank you, Chair. I can look at this report from two sides, being a reformed or an ex-farmer, but also being related to someone who's got to deal with farmers in regards to the enforcement. This is not new, but I think it's very important to set out the exact route to how solution can be found to issues with water on the road. And over the last 4 or 5 years, that the problem has greatly increased due to the amount of rain we've had and water tables rising and so on. But from my discussions with farmers, most of them are in favour of a clear, defined route on how these issues can be resolved. My question is, has consideration again been taken into the timescales that SEPA worked to with regards to drainage work and so on? Has that been something that's been looked at in terms of enforcement and getting work done? Because again, as I said previously, I've heard on numerous occasions that SEPA seem to have caused problems in terms of getting essential work done. Just wanting clarification or some sort of acknowledgement that the timescales that SEPA worked have been taken into consideration and timescales that these letters, whatever, be sent out.
It's not been specifically taken into consideration, but what I would add is that if we're in the position of discussing with a landowner or farmer such like about discharge, and there's an issue with licences for the farmer to obtain to undertake works, then clearly the council would be not doing any formal chasing of a landowner because they hadn't got the licences in place. But if we felt that, you know, another 6 months had gone by and an application hadn't been made with SEPA and it was a sort of delaying tactic, then we're in a slightly different position. Generally, the kind of works we're talking about, I know farmers will have difficulties with SEPA on simple licences and complex licences perhaps, but I would think the size of problem we're dealing with, the field ditches and such like, that are, you know, the maintenance and the direction of water to ensure it doesn't end up on the road, will probably fall under lower levels of general binding rules or agreements, and in such, I would expect that we should be able to work with the landowner and SEPA to sort of speed that up and hopefully get a solution quite quickly. But no, there would be no, you know, if we've got an agreement with the landowner, we're not going to hound them because SEPA haven't supported their application.
Okay, I have Jim, then Alistair, then Patsy.
Thanks, Chair. I think one of the big issues for me is the fact that in the good old days, we had what we used to call roadmen who run up and down on bicycles, who were located at strategic locations right throughout the region. And with them no longer being there, I don't think the drains and gullies, roadsides are cleared as often as they should be. And I think that's a contributing factor. And I appreciate that's an operational matter and that's something that officers need to consider. But you've also got sometimes circumstances, and I'll offer you an example. Telewest employed subcontractors to lay a fibre optic cable up the length of the C125, and in doing so they destroyed every road drain the length of the C125. So now we have a situation where the rainwater comes from the fields into the gully, nowhere to go, it cascades onto the road, and we will have the potential of challenging the farmer when in effect it wasn't the council, it wasn't the farmer, it was a subcontractor carrying out work inappropriately that has left us with a legacy that we are now trying to unravel. I'm sure that's not the case across the region, but I'm just trying to say it's not always as simple as ABC when you're looking at dealing with flooding issues and how that might be resolved by the council.
Yeah, I mean, I think if in that situation was drawn to our attention, then we wouldn't be pursuing a landowner in that particular situation. But I would add that DG first in agreeing to works in the road and the potential damage to the road drainage, need to ensure that there's proper supervision and that this does not happen. And that's more of the situation we need to address is picking up the contractors for damage in our infrastructure.
Okay, Alistair.
Thanks, Chair. I think that's a point that, when James talks about, drawn to our attention, as far as I'm concerned, sir, we should be aware of everything that's taking place within the curtilage of our road network in Dumfries and Galloway. So as long as there are systems and arrangements in place which do draw it to our attention, or do make sure, in fact, that we're aware of it, that's a big step in the right direction. My view, Chair, is that, and I've been involved in several cases over the last number of years from a rural mid-Galloway perspective on this very issue. I don't think that this report is in any way, shape or form draconian. I think it's a balanced and a reasonable approach to exercising the powers that are already vested in this council. And the proposed method of operation, for want of a better term, that's set out in the appendices and the letters, etc., I would suggest reinforce that view. Regrettably, there will be occasions, Chair, in my view, when we will meet a certain degree of intransigence, and in these circumstances, we'll simply have to address it on the basis of such as the service of notices, etc. But that, in my view, sir, should be a last resort. We shouldn't be choosing the nuclear option in the first instance. And I think, couched in these terms and against that background, I think this is long overdue, and I personally welcome the report today, and I would hope very much indeed, Chair, that we will approve it and then, as I say, get on and deal with these issues when they come up.
Thanks, Alistair. Patsy?
Yeah, well, I should have actually declared an interest in this because our farm we do have main road right along beside it. Not that we have lots of flooding on it, but I don't think it makes any difference, so I'm not leaving. But I actually rather agree with Jim Dempsey there. If you're going to send out notices, because there's been flooding caused by drainage on farms or whatever, landowners, whatever like that. You've got to make sure your own are in order, and that's the roadside drains are taking away the water that they're meant to be taking away, because a lot of the time they're not. And that is not actually entirely down to DG First. There are things now like, with us we have relatively narrow roads with huge tractors that meet, and you could have dug the drain out today and you get a big tractor meeting a milk tanker and it's filled in tomorrow. So there are there's more than, it's not as straightforward as perhaps you make it seem. So I think you have to do, as Councillor Geddes said, that it's not to be too draconian. There's probably reasons and ways of dealing with it without actually just too carried away. But equally, I had somebody last year who they lived on a hill, and there was just water running down the hill, and then it froze, and that was an absolute skating rink for a week, and that was because the water was just coming straight off the land, and there was nowhere for it to go except down the road. So that was maybe an issue of time when somebody ought to be doing it up. But you've got to be a bit careful.
Yes, we will work with DG First to ensure that it is a diplomatic approach. I think what we've got to remember is that we're not talking about flooding of the road being the driver for this. It's if we get heavy rainfall events, seriously heavy rainfall events, we're going to get water on the road, and where its source is, whether it's just landing on the road and not getting off the road, or whether it's coming from fields and there's things like that. But there are situations across the region, and the team leaders in the areas will know these specific situations where you have, every time it rains, a field entrance discharges water onto the public road. And remember, although our grips and offlets may be damaged by vehicles overrunning verges and such like, they're there to take the water off the road that has landed on the road. They're not designed to take the water off the road that has run onto the road from a field or from, something like that. So the amount of water that's ponding on the road should technically only be the water that's fallen on the road. But yes, if our offlets are better cut, then that could be much better done.
You got one or two fields to check when you go home tonight, Patsy. Can I just bring Jim in at this point?
Yep. While I hear what Councillor Gilroy is saying, you also have to say that the land drainage that farmers use now is far more effective than what it used to be, so therefore there's more water coming off the fields, landing onto the roads. So are the council supposed to be responsible for increasing our drainage because the farmers increase theirs?
Can I bring in Ronnie now?
Thanks. Just a quick question. Does this only mean farmers when we talk about landowners? Who else might this affect? Who have ownership responsibility of drainage matters?
Technically, it's an offence to discharge water onto the public road. So it could be anybody. It could be a single property owner with a large driveway, and we would require under new planning, under planning regulations, to have that trapped so it isn't discharging on the public road. Because obviously in an urban area, everybody who surfaces over their front garden and turns it into a parking area, and this discharge on the public road has an impact upon roads drainage. But we're being realistic about this. We're talking about traffic. We're really talking about safety issues in terms of freezing of water on the road or water ponding on the road from particularly high speed roads. So these kind of things, plus the damage to the road surface caused by any water ponding on the road and getting into cracks in the road surface. So the legislation doesn't make any specific reference. It just says discharge of water onto the public road. But yes, I mean, it's going to be targeted at the ones where there's a serious issue in terms of road safety or road damage.
So it could affect anybody, in other words, but it won't be targeted to the people that cause the most impact and damage. And that includes businesses as well, for example, a car wash business or that maybe have drainage onto the main roadway from their business, does it?
I mean, there is another slight issue with that kind of business, that kind of discharge has the potential that if there's a separate sewer network system, you've got potential pollution of water courses and such like, because these gullies go straight to the water courses, and that may cause us problems. But most of our systems are combined, so we'll worry too much about that. But yes, it would. Again, I don't think there's a particular issue with that unless it starts becoming a road safety issue. There's a lot of mud or whatever washed onto the road by the car cleaning business.
Okay, I've got Ian Dick, then Ian Crothers.
Thanks, Chair. Just on the issue that Councillor Dempster raised, which I assume could mean poor workmanship, for instance. Now, I understood that, I think it was last year, probably in the last administration, we passed a policy on allowing for quality control in road maintenance, clerks of works, if you like, so that the quality of the road workmanship is checked. Does this apply to drainage as well, particularly now if we're implementing a drainage policy? Do we have somebody going out there checking and making sure that the work of either our own in-house workforce or subcontractors is up to the standard which we require?
In terms of the damage that Councillor Dempster has referenced in terms of the utilities, there is a resource within DG First to do utility inspections. Quite often, they don't always catch. They're not observing all of the inspections at any one time, and that's obviously these events. The damage can take place that goes missed, and that's a matter of level of resource and good notification by utilities to avoid trying to do that. In terms of the performance assurance framework that you reference, Councillor, we agreed at this committee that we would look at an increased resource in relation to it was primarily the kind of surfacing schemes and the road schemes, and probably the drainage works that we attached to that through the strategic roads programme and the roads structural maintenance programme, and that has been identified in terms of the resource that's required for that as a budget pressure within the service, and it's mentioned in the service review that we're bringing to this committee next week as well. So it's not something that has been resourced in the time since this committee gave us that direction on it to take forward, but it would be primarily focused on the quality of the surfacing and the schemes taken forward and the surface dressing, but it could also deal as a resource with the drainage works that are associated with those improvement schemes.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just to come back, I mean, I think I'm absolutely okay with agreeing with this today. I would like to see something coming back, because Councillor Nicholson in particular was aware, picked up, this is absolutely anybody. It could be somebody's household where they could water going off their drive onto a pavement, and somebody, it can, it's potential danger, somebody freezes, somebody slips and breaks a leg or whatever, or it could be a landowner out in the middle of the countryside where it's water causing flooding and ponding it, and it could cause a car crash depending, and it's how that's risks assessed. I mean, I think there's no impact assessment with this because it's not needed because it's not a change of policy, it's legislation already in place. But I think depending on how this goes, how we move forward, there's resource issues, there's potential financial implications certainly if we're looking to up the ante on this. So there will be a bigger resource put into this. So even if we could just see, I would like to see a report coming back maybe after 6 months or a year, whatever it is, just to see how this is being handled, the response from residents, landowners, whatever you want to call them, different property owners across Dumfries and Galloway, and how it's been enacted and how it's coming in.
I mean, presumably this now goes into the business plan. In fact, we're going to, if it's agreed, we're going to implement this enforcement, and therefore when we get the 6-monthly reports on the business plan, that's obviously an area that would be covered by that, I'm presuming. And it may be worth just flagging up that we would quite like, after the first, I suppose, initial 6 months, a sort of, within the business plan, quite a detailed part just on this. Is that rather than a separate report?
I'm absolutely okay with that, just because we're looking at it specifically today. It would be good to see whether how it's impacted across the council, because other things were mentioned. We got in our area, there was an infrastructure connection from Stevens Croft International Grid, which was for the top side of Lockerbie, and pretty much a trench dug between there and Chapel Cross. Now, some of the road verge, the profile was raised in some places by 8 or 12 inches because
it saved the organisation, the company putting in the infrastructure money, rather than export that away and put in proper Type 1 sub-base, they exported it, and some of the roads repairs were unbelievably. We've covered that through, Stephen mentioned, we put extra resource in, so we're looking after our actual, how the repairs are done to the carriages from now on. We've certainly increased that, but the water can't get off the road, so a lot of it is actually our own problem as well. It's not just coming from landowners when it gets on, and that's because we've not been watching what utility companies have been doing close enough and actually enforcing. So there is a lot of wider implications here.
Finlay?
Just very quick, I think we might be missing the point here. This is all in place already. All we're doing is actually looking at and agreeing a more formal process. You know, it's within the powers officers to enforce and fine. At the moment, all we're doing is actually looking at a more formal process that the officers will carry out, just to make us aware of that.
Okay, we'll go to the recommendations. Okay, happy to agree. And there is two elements to this, obviously agreed in implementation, but obviously our responsibility in terms of the road asset management plan going forward as well. So happy to agree then? Yep. Okay, folks, thank you very much for your time. We'll see you again on the 20th of November. Don't forget, very important PH&E meeting that day as well.